The year is 2100 and society had advanced significantly. Research aimed at increasing human life expectancy had reached new heights. This sparked a wave of enthusiasts in physical activities. In this context, a virtual reality game called God's Domain was launched, utilizing players' real-life movements. Its popularity caused the company's stock to skyrocket. By 2139, the game was already an integral part of people's lives. His account had been deleted. This fueled his anger, as he didn't know the reason behind such an act. Xin Feng was being forced to sign a termination contract without being informed beforehand. He had dedicated much of his life to elevating his guild, which also contributed to the company's growth. Because he had opposed Shadow's desire to merge with other guilds, he was discarded. To mitigate the fallout, they offer him $5 million and a grand mansion, which was supposed to make him happy and compliant. With no other option, Feng drowned himself in alcohol amidst the depression he was feeling. He had been discarded by them as if he were a beggar, someone without any worth. He wouldn't let this slide. He would do something, even if he had to start from scratch. At that moment, the alcohol hit him hard. He felt dizzy and no longer knew what had happened. His phone was ringing. It was Blackie, calling much earlier than usual. Answering the phone, he saw that Blackie was very excited about a recruitment event Shadow was holding at their school. Feng thought it was a joke since his most recent memory was of being fired. Gripped by a sudden realization, he let his phone fall to the ground, shaken. He needed to look in the mirror to see himself, while Blackie stayed on the line, thinking his friend had overdone it with alcohol. Finally, Feng noticed he looked much younger. He grabbed his phone again, and the opening screen confirmed the year, 2129. With no apparent explanation, he had gone back 10 years into the past. This wasn't the type of second chance he had been hoping for. Now those who betrayed him would face the wrath of his revenge. Blackie was still excited, wanting them to quickly sign up for the guild selection. He was soon surprised to find that Feng no longer wanted to take the exam and instead planned to start his own guild. Feng knew that in the coming years, Blackie would become an excellent manager and had only joined Shadow to support his family. Blackie pointed out that there was a massive market barrier for them. They needed a lot of money, which they didn't have. Feng refused to sell out to Shadow again and didn't want to sell out to anyone. Disheartened, Blackie said that with the money they had, they wouldn't even be able to afford basic equipment. Feng remembered that there was a discount for university students and that they could use the equipment to experience the game for 10 days. Blackie acknowledged that 10 days was a short time, but Feng assured him he would handle the financial side. To prepare, he bought some items from the market. In his room, he was properly equipped to start the game. Once again, he entered God's Domain for the first time. Feng was successfully connected to the game server. It had been so long since he had been there that he no longer remembered the details of the old login screen. From above him descended a creature from the sky, resembling a harpy. She was the game's navigation angel and introduced herself as Gabriel. She would show him the 4 main classes of the game, totaling 12 professions in all. He chose to be a swordsman, and just like the last time, named his character Yi Feng. Since he could customize his appearance, he did so only to avoid being recognized in the real world. In the kingdom of Starmoon, he decided to be born in White River, a city with growth potential and a bright future. This also allowed him to avoid conflict with major guilds. Once the city was chosen, he was immediately sent there. In another area, he realized he was in Redleaf, which was identical to his memories of it. There were other players in the city interacting with non-playable characters. New players were still figuring out what they could do in the game. Feng was considering how to allocate his 4 attribute points earned each time he leveled up. In his past life, physical damage players prioritized strength. However, he already knew that the best choice was to focus on agility from the beginning. His overall speed would improve, increasing his damage frequency, something that others wouldn't discover until much later. Blackie, a specialist in curses, was in Moonfall City. They were quite far apart, and Blackie was eager to level up. Feng said they have a plan, and they won't make money if they desperately level up. He revealed to him that there are unique quests, which made Blackie very excited. Feng walks to a different town. There are several suspicious-looking people in this place. That is a unique quest found in Redleaf. He invited Blackie to go there, but the boy didn't want to miss the chance to become stronger. Now he wants to know how Feng knows so much about the game. He assumed his friend must have met someone special, like someone who had already tested the beta platform. He asked Blackie to come to him quickly and said he would help him level up. Because they would do it much faster than regular players, Blackie was convinced. Approaching a wanderer, Feng asked if he needed help. The man asked for a piece of bread, saying he hadn't eaten for days. Feng said he couldn't help with that, but he could assist in other ways for the right price. Unique quests are only unlocked after the correct dialogue is performed. The man asked him to help kill the mayor of Redleaf Town. A system screen popped up. The player needed to confirm that they accepted the quest. Feng knew there was no option to decline. Inside the town hall, several players were waiting to talk to the mayor. Mayor Cross was level 15 and had formidable attributes. Feng knew that at his current level, not even 100 players like him could achieve victory. But he had done it before, so he threw the apple he was eating at the mayor. Now his favorability with that character had dropped to hostile levels. The mayor leaped at the player, determined to kill him, but Feng knew the only one to perish there would be the mayor. 15 minutes earlier, he had been preparing to execute the quest. Right in front of him must be the town hall. The line to receive beginner quests from the mayor was already huge. and Feng apologized for what he was about to do next. While thinking, a player told him to go to the back of the line if he didn't want to get lynched. Feng said he wasn't there to take quests and advised the player to look for quests elsewhere, as staying there was a waste of time. But the player knew people left the town hall with accepted quests and thought he was being deceived. Feng said hunting monsters outside the town was more useful for leveling up. But the competition outside was already huge, and he intended to take a collection quest, which was less dangerous. Feng mentioned that areas with fewer monsters weren't sought after because the monsters took time to respawn and he would hunt solo. The player got excited about the tip. Feng charged 20 coins for the tip, and the player remembered beginners started the game with only 10 coins. Feng said he could pay 10 coins now and the rest once he confirmed the tip was true. The player decided to trust him. Finally, he had the money needed to buy the weapon he would use against the mayor. He bought 10 tomatoes, each costing 1 copper coin, an impressive expense for beginners. 2 girls who saw that started laughing, thinking whoever bought the tomatoes must be a fool who had never played the game before. The line at the town hall kept growing. The mayor continued his work of assigning quests. Feng walked calmly, entering the place. He threw the first tomato at the mayor. After that, he began calling him bald, obese, and stinky, saying he didn't deserve to be the town's mayor. The mayor was already burning with rage from the insults and being hit with a tomato. It didn't take long for him to get hit again. Feng was emptying all the tomatoes he had, throwing them at the mayor. The other players were shocked by such absurd behavior. The mayor now considered him an enemy and was seething with fury. That was what Feng had been waiting for all this time. The hall was filled with an ear-splitting roar of rage. Hostile, the mayor charged at Feng, who barely managed to block the attack. Even though he blocked it, it was almost a fatal blow. Some players admired the skill of the young man who survived using a beginner's sword. Furious, the mayor began to change appearance, revealing himself to be a werewolf. Still determined to kill Feng, now the players were scared to discover the mayor's true identity. The creature charged furiously, determined to end his provocateur. The guards immediately reacted as there was a hostile creature in the town. Attacking the mayor would have made the guards attack Feng, but by provoking him, he revealed his identity, causing the guards to immediately retaliate. A brutal fight ensued, and the creature stood no chance. Other players decide to join the guards' assault, thinking about the experience they might gain. A barrage of attacks ensues. The creature continues to be overwhelmed by the players and guards, until finally the fatal strike is delivered. With the creature's death, they were left wondering why it hadn't dropped any items, nor had they received any experience for the feat. The only one who could explain it was the player who threw the tomatoes, but Feng was no longer there carrying the mayor's seal with him. The man was joyful as his long-awaited wish had finally been fulfilled. With the mission completed, he handed Feng an item as a reward. Feng was surprised by the volume of the reward upon completing the mission and thought it might be because he had done it while at level 0. Now it remains to be seen what treasure he will receive upon opening that box. An intense blue flash emerges as the box is opened. He received a gravity ring. For 30 seconds, it makes the body light as a feather, and it recharges in 5 minutes. Feng was very happy to receive an item like that so early in the game. With the extra attributes, he decided to increase his agility even further. He is now so agile he resembles an assassin. He also improved his mastery of one-handed blades. Knowing he needs to get stronger, he headed to the Goblin Challenge to receive a skill book. That arena is tough, as stepping onto it reduces attributes to 10 points. Completing it seems impossible, not to mention that each attempt has a cost. No player has passed the goblins yet. Upon respawning, one player said he almost made it and wanted to know if his friend had any extra money. But they had already given everything they had. There was nothing left now. Heartpiercer will be a formidable player in the future, an excellent assassin, but it seems his game start was miserable. He soon notices Feng nearby. He introduced himself as a squad leader from the Assassin League. He asked to borrow 5 copper coins, promising to pay 20 back the next day. Feng agreed to lend him the money, and the player thought he had intimidated Feng by mentioning his affiliation with the Assassin League. But to his surprise, Feng demanded 50 copper coins as repayment. The player's subordinates were angered by the audacity of the rookie. Even so, he agreed to the loan terms. Feng added him as a friend so he could collect the debt the next day. He walked away cheerful, happy to have made such an easy profit. The subordinates wondered if they were really going to repay the debt. They suggested just canceling the agreement, but the man refused to let his name be tarnished over a debt. He was very close to completing the challenge and believed today would be the day he succeeded. His subordinates cheered him on, albeit reluctantly. They went back to the challenge once more. There they noticed that the one who had lent them the coins was also there to take on the challenge. They didn't expect the rookie to accomplish anything, especially since the goblins' attack pattern changes at the last moment. Feng was being teleported and the challenge had begun. The loud cracks signaled the start of the attempt and he sprinted forward. On the other side, the goblins began firing. Feng ran toward them as the goblins adjusted their aim. He managed to dodge their shots as he approached. The group watching was amazed at his performance, and their leader speculated that the player must be an athlete or a martial artist. It was as if he were already a veteran. He was definitely not an ordinary guy. The leader even began wondering if he could move as fluidly as this rookie. However, he knew the real challenge would arise at the 15-meter mark. Feng reached this distance and the goblins were already prepared. The creatures began executing their new attack pattern against him. Several bullets flew through the air. Feng felt it was time to showcase even more of his skills. He quickly drew his sword as he continued advancing. The players watching from outside laughed, thinking he intended to block bullets with a sword. To their utter surprise, that's exactly what he did. Feng pressed on with determination. Now the players were questioning if he was even human. With the sword in his hand, no attack could reach him. Upon reaching 25 meters, he was on the verge of completing the challenge, which frustrated the leader. Even though the game was new, there was already a player capable of predicting bullet trajectories and beyond that, blocking them with his sword. His control over his character was incredible. From outside, Heartpiercer warned him to be careful. The goblins now had even larger weapons with a much faster firing rate. The machine guns began to sing the song of their people. That volume of firepower is definitely no joke. One of the goblins notices the player coming toward him, sword in hand. Feng manages to keep defending himself using only his blade. After that, an explosion occurs, leaving the other players impressed. Feng jumps over the debris and moving forward. He managed to reach the end of the course in just 14 seconds. The goblin congratulated him for completing the challenge at the bronze rank. He was the first player to finish at that rank and received 1 silver coin and a swordsmanship skill. Outside, the players are celebrating his achievement. The Thunder Flash skill delivers 3 consecutive attacks with increasing damage on each strike. It's a very good skill to have early on. Swordsmen focus on single target damage, and this is one of the few skills that can be used in an area. Behind him are 3 players completely astonished. Feng said he was leaving and stated he would collect his debt the next day. The henchman considered attacking this player to steal his prize. He reprimanded them, saying they should befriend someone with such potential, not the opposite. With the talent book in hand, it was time for him to start training. Some players were gathering a group to explore the forest. Feng spent 20 coins to buy an explosive fruit. He needed to hunt a few more monsters to earn more money. The recommended level for the forest is level 1. Observing the team next to him, he saw 2 warriors, a damage dealer and a healer. Although the total experience is shared, hunting this way is much safer and more efficient. Dying in the game results in losing items and levels as well. One of the players antagonizes Feng, warning him not to steal the spot they claimed. He left knowing he needed to gain more experience, heading to a place with level 5 creatures. But he decided not to attack bears as they have high stats and call their mothers when in danger. Seeing a forest wolf, he decided it would be his target. One alone would be easy. The problem would be if the wolf's den was nearby with more creatures. His attack was aborted as the ground beneath his feet suddenly gave way. He fell in front of the entrance to a cave. Looking behind, he saw several glowing eyes. The worst-case scenario had come true. A wolf den was near his location. Feng ran desperately to avoid engaging in combat with the creatures. The wolves were very fast and resilient. He had to take evasive measures to keep dodging their attacks. Using the ring's ability, he reduced gravity's effects on his body. This allowed him to sprint away at high speed. After running for some time, he managed to escape the creatures, reaching the central mountain range where a hidden chest was located. Since he was already there, he decided to collect it. He walked toward a waterfall. This must be the place. Without a way to climb, players can only do so after reaching 40 agility points and acquiring a skill called floating steps, but he had the gravity ring. With a few jumps, he was almost at the top. He managed to reach his destination without much trouble, until he was surprised by a massive stone hand. This was the creature he had been waiting for. The golem fully emerged, but Feng was unfazed by its presence. This was a level 5 rock giant. Feng already had an item prepared specifically for that creature. From his inventory, he pulled out the explosive fruit, which reduced movement capabilities. He had to dodge the monster's first attack. In the process, he threw the fruit he was carrying. An aura began spreading the item's effects, and the giant started to become immobile. This was the window of opportunity he had been looking for. With precise strikes, he began attacking the creature, unable to defend itself. Its stone body was being carved by the sword, until its resistance was entirely depleted. This was the ideal scenario to increase his proficiency, as this strategy combination was very safe. While he was thinking, he had to dodge another monster's attack. The creature continued attacking and Feng dodged, using his great agility. Gaining space with the dodge, he had an opportunity to strike, delivering precise cuts to the rock giant's body. With the victory, he obtained an item, a cloth shirt. Still thinking, he heard noises coming from a direction and saw bats flying in the sky. Then he managed to spot a cave in the rock. He decided to enter and explore the place. Inside the cave, he saw several blue crystals and bones scattered across the floor. Among them, an enormous stone monster, level 6. As if that wasn't enough, it was also an elite monster. Feng reacted first and began unleashing his attacks on it. Furious, the monster calls the human an insolent creature, destroying the cavern floor with the first of its strikes. Feng is pensive as his enemy has many hit points, something potentially problematic. Their battle continues with the creature enraged. Feng is agile and has already managed to approach safely. Skillfully, he positioned himself behind the monster. With great agility, he delivered a large sequence of attacks. However, each strike dealt minimal damage, and soon he had to dodge again to avoid being hit by the monster. Feng needed to gain distance to remain safe. He had been careless. Elite monsters recovered 2% of their health every 5 seconds. His normal attacks were useless against that. His only solution was to use the newly learned skill to defeat the creature. He managed to position himself on one of the stone arms, striking more blows and realizing that this time his plan was working. Furious, the monster unleashed a wave of energy around it. Leaping to an impressive height, it aimed to shatter its aggressor. Attacking with devastating force, Feng hadn't expected the dungeon boss to use its strongest attack so soon. The shockwave scattered rocks, but Feng managed to cut through them with his sword. Amidst the destruction, he found a place to hide. The monster stood at the epicenter of the dust cloud. That attack had apparently left it fatigued, significantly reducing its attack, defense, and regeneration. Another window of opportunity had opened for him. The monster continued attacking, but not with the same intensity. Feng managed to approach and strike one of the creature's eyes, jumping off its face as it writhed in pain. More blade strikes followed. It fell to the ground, turning its attention to one of its legs. The monster collapsed to the floor, forced to support itself with its hands. It attempted to recover its energy once more, standing up and releasing a powerful roar. Feng saw that the monster had disappeared. He didn't know where it had gone until he realized it was behind him, blocking a direct attack at the last moment. The force of the impact sent him flying against the cavern's stone wall. Feng tried to recover while spitting a bit of blood. With almost no health left, he decided to stake everything on his next attack. He advanced using the Gravity Rings ability, unleashing thunderous flash as he got close enough, slicing the monster into several pieces of stone. This created the opportunity to deliver a final strike, completely piercing the creature with his charge, leaving a massive void in the chest of the monstrosity. Feng began to recover, noticing his shield had been dropped. His luck was incredible. Besides the equipment, there was a skill book parry which allows the player to block a frontal attack. Finding it useful, he immediately learned the skill. Now he could start climbing the mountain. The enormous rock wall before him was no longer an obstacle, landing softly on the ground. Reaching the top of the mountain, he realized something was wrong. The fog had never been so thick there. He knew about a treasure chest, but didn't expect there to be a hidden quest as well. Though he had read on forums about unguided quests, he remembered that such quests disappear once completed. He didn't expect to find one. He decided to explore the area, knowing that if he died, he would respawn in the city. He entered one of the houses and began inspecting it. After searching, he hadn't found anything in the place. There was no one there, and figuring things out on his own would take a long time. He climbs the rooftop to observe the village from above. From there, he noticed something. Now there was less fog, and he spotted a magic tower in the town. That must be where the quest was directing him. Inside, he was greeted by a mage who told him this was the Sky City. A renowned city in the game, it disappeared during the Third War of the Gods. It wasn't supposed to be there. The mage said he could make Feng stronger, provided he accepted his test, and Feng agreed. The mage explained there were difficulty levels, and Feng immediately chose the hardest one. He had nothing to lose. The mage admired his determination and was impressed. The challenge was to kill at least 500 monsters of the same level within 4 hours. Outside, warrior specters began to appear. The creatures started running toward the magic tower, and the quest had begun. The monster army advanced. If he wasn't careful, he would be eliminated quickly. As an experienced player, he already had an idea. At that point on the stairs, only 2 monsters could pass at a time. He could trap them there. The battle finally began. Slowly, the mission's progress keeps advancing. He continues fending off the creatures that attack. The more time passes, the more creatures are obliterated. With them stuck in that passage, reaching the 500 creature mark wouldn't be difficult. But to his surprise, there were assassins as well. Much more agile, they managed to climb through other paths. Feng was now surrounded on both sides. He had to react quickly to preserve his health. Being skilled, he managed to do it with extreme mastery, defeating the monsters trying to take him down. After much fighting, he suffered his first hit, which took away a significant portion of his health, but he soon countered and took down the creature. On the ground, more specters awaited. The last 100 monsters were much more agile, but also much more fragile. The challenge was facing so many at once. This pushed his skills to their absolute limits. Feng descended upon them, making his blade sing the sound of his people. The battle seemed to have come to an end. He had defeated the 500 creatures, but he was utterly exhausted. The mage appeared and said his performance wasn't bad at all. Completing the mission, he received a gold chest and the title 1 against 1,000. Equipping the title reduces 5 strength and endurance, but grants a 10% blessing to allies. The mage departed, but Feng wished he could have asked him a few questions before that. A teleportation portal returned him to the city. Falling from the sky and startling nearby players, Feng didn't want to return to Red Leaf just yet. He couldn't let anyone else claim the gold chest he had fought so hard to earn. Finding a secluded spot, he decided to open the gold chest. As he opened it, a golden light emanated from its interior. The items inside surprised him. He was now in possession of a magical weapon. They greatly enhanced the player's strength, but may have recoil effects that harm the user. Knowing this, he chose not to bind the item to himself and stored the skill books. He headed to the Black Moon Valley. There he could lease the forge and gain even more levels. Not to mention, it was a good opportunity to sell extra items he carried and anything surplus. He began announcing that he had excellent items for sale. Some players couldn't believe such good items were being sold. Most of them had beginner equipment, but there were already bronze items available. One player tried to negotiate a discount, but Feng refused. Blackie called him, saying he tried to reach him earlier, but couldn't. He was still behind others in level, but Feng told him to head to the central square, promising to help him with that. Flaming Tiger, a leader from Shadow, arrived and said they would take everything being sold there. He approached Feng and asked if the items belonged to him. Feng had been used as a disposable pawn by him in his past life, and now he sought revenge. Flaming Tiger offered a silver coin for all the items, but Feng promptly refused. This only made the arrogant fool immediately angry. Apparently, he would always remain a malicious idiot, unaware that fights in the city always end poorly for players. Brandishing his spear, he prepared to attack Feng. Before the conflict began, a man from the Assassin's League arrived, interested in the bronze shield. He recognized Feng and said he would buy everything for 24 silver coins. Feng liked the offer and forgave a 50 copper debt, adding him as a friend. Amid the crowd, Blackie also arrived. With his friend's arrival, he bid farewell to the buyers. One of them lamented this as he wanted to chat a bit longer. Feng said they would hunt monsters in the Black Moon Valley, which greatly alarmed his friend. The monsters in that area were level 4. He wished they would go somewhere safer first. Flaming Tiger didn't want to let this go unnoticed and was preparing an ambush. In the company of his friend, they headed to the Black Moon Valley. His friend was worried about the strength of the monsters there. Then he remembered he knew a player who tested the beta version of the game. It had only been 10 hours since the game's launch. There weren't many level 2 players. Feng had only achieved this because of privileged information. After hearing this, his friend became much more excited about the promising future. However, his friend's reaction still wasn't what he had expected. He was overly confident. They were being watched, and this observer began to suspect something was off with them heading to such a dangerous monster area. He planned to use this opportunity for his own benefit. Behind a rock, he called his friend to see the monsters he had found. In front of them was a level 2 snow fox, a very cunning monster. This made him happy because blue-named monsters are rare and elite. Moving into combat, he asked his friend to deal damage from a distance while he handled the rest. Assuming he was hiding behind the fox, ready to deliver a stealth attack. His first attack hit its mark, dealing 32 points of damage to the creature. But it wasn't enough to take down the fox, which now entered attack mode. The small damage dealt proved that the creature was far tougher than he had expected. The creature lunged at him, ready to deliver a fatal strike. Using his sword, he managed to avoid being caught in its jaws. That brief interaction caused him to lose 49 health points, confirming the fox was also very strong. On the other side, Blackie was impressed by the battle, thinking his friend wouldn't survive. It was then that Feng ordered his friend to start attacking the fox as well. A little more determined, Blackie launched one of his attacks, hitting the creature directly. Even though he had put all his points into intelligence, his magical damage was insignificant. Feng motivated him, saying not to be afraid. He would distract the creature and Blackie just needed to keep attacking. With this strategy, Blackie was able to attack repeatedly from a safe distance. Meanwhile, Feng held the front line, enduring the fox attacks. With his powerful melee attacks, he managed to survive and avoid the more dangerous strikes. The assassin watching them still believed they were useless trash, thinking he wouldn't need to intervene. The fox still had half its health, while Feng was already very tired and worn out. With the little strength he had left, he defended against another attack from the fox. His power was enough to cause his sword's durability to start dropping rapidly. Blackie was panicking, certain his friend was truly going to die this time. Feng needed to preserve his sword or it would break. Dodging, he managed to knee the creature. This repelled the monster's attack and pushed it away from him. But he knew that if things continued like this, he would end up as fox food. It was time to use the skills he had acquired. Skillfully, he jumped onto the fox and opened a bottle he carried, drinking it completely. The tonic caused any enemies in front of him to lose 2 levels. With this, the fox dropped to level 0. Now was his chance to turn the tide of the fight. Determined, he charged at the creature, executing several strikes as he passed it. The barrage of attacks was extremely effective, obliterating the fox. Blackie wanted to know what kind of tonic he had drunk as his friend suddenly became much stronger. Feng, an experienced player, knew the fight wasn't over yet. He needed just one more attack to finish the battle for good. This time, his sword was ready to pierce the creature's flesh. At the last moment, he realized he was being attacked by another player. He immediately created distance to see who had surprised him. The player was named Silent Wolf, who complimented Feng on dodging his stealth attack. Feng immediately recognized him as a member of his former guild, realizing that not much had changed. On the other side, the fox was extremely weakened. As a last resort, it began to channel energy into its body. This was the monster's gigantification ability. Its attack, speed, and health increased by 20%. The fox immediately focused on Feng, who had been attacking from the start. Blackie was deeply worried for his friend, knowing the assassin wanted to use this as an opportunity. As Silent Wolf advanced for the attack, he warned Feng never to provoke Shadow again. Feng was fully aware of the assassin's approach. As the assassin advanced from one flank, Feng had to deal with the fox in front of him. With skill, he redirected the creature's attack toward the assassin. Now the fox's jaws were heading straight for the clown. Silent Wolf drew his dagger to defend himself, completely terrified. The creature's mouth closed around him as if he were a small snack. The fox spat him onto the ground like trash, while the assassin tried to make sense of what had happened. Even Blackie, watching the fight, didn't understand what he had just seen. Once again, Feng told him to focus and get back to the fight, which wasn't over yet. Thus, the two refocused on the fox that needed to be defeated. Finally, they managed to overcome it, earning 10 experience points for the victory. One of the items obtained was a common wooden staff, an item usable by mages. He offered it to his friend as the staff was of no use to him. Blackie was embarrassed because, without Feng's actions, they wouldn't have been able to defeat the fox. He reiterated that the staff would be much more useful in the hands of a curse specialist than in his own. Therefore, the best course of action was for Blackie to accept the item gratefully. In the city, Flaming Tiger was furious because the assassin had failed his mission. Knowing his boss to be a ruthless man, the assassin decided not to reveal he had been killed while setting up an ambush. He claimed to have encountered a rare monster in the forest and was surprised by Feng while trying to kill it. Since there were two attackers, he couldn't do anything and informed Flaming Tiger that they were now heading to Black Moon Valley. The mention of a rare elite monster left Flaming Tiger excited. Now he and his henchmen would head straight to that location to encounter the rare monster. Enraged, he was determined to make them regret what had happened. Inside a house, a blacksmith was working tirelessly. They had been there for over half an hour. Blackie mentioned being bored, but Feng insisted it was the only way to activate the quest. 10 more minutes passed before the blacksmith noticed their interest in forging. Feng told him that his interest in forging began in childhood. With that, he accepted a hidden quest requiring the delivery of 100 ore pieces. The Crimson Star Mine was a place full of level 4 monsters. Feng used a smoke bomb to help them infiltrate the area unnoticed. The bomb hit the ground and started releasing its smoke. Calmly, he asked his friend to attack the monsters. This order filled Blackie with fear, but as he was still level 0, he decided to obey. Immediately, he launched an attack at one of them. The attack was strong enough to pierce the chest of one of the creatures. Despite the attack, the creature remained alive, losing only 21 health points. Furious, it looked toward the source of the attack, leaving Blackie terrified. Feng reassured him, explaining that the creature's vision was limited by the smoke bomb and these specific ones had poor eyesight. As long as they stayed about 30 meters away, they wouldn't be attacked under any circumstances. The beast roared angrily, unable to determine who had attacked it. From a safe distance, Feng encouraged his friend to continue attacking. This time, Blackie focused much more energy into his attack, landing a massive volley of blows on the creature. Finally, the creature fell dead to the ground, while its companions seemed to ignore what had happened. Now much more excited, Blackie realized leveling up this way was far easier than he had imagined. He continued delivering devastating attacks on the creatures, who couldn't pinpoint the source of hostility. Filled with joy, the experience felt like a target shooting game. It didn't take long for the area to be filled with the bodies of fallen creatures. Between waves of attacks, Blackie replenished his mana by drinking potions. Given the abundance of items they had obtained, Feng noted his friend's luck must be extraordinary. But there was no time to stop. They had much more to do. This time, Feng approached the creatures close enough to be attacked as well. In front of them stood an overwhelming number of monsters determined to strike him. They charged furiously at Feng, who used another smoke bomb to protect himself. Meanwhile, his friend could attack the creatures from a safe distance. It was turning to great fun. After some time, they had new items. Blackie had reached level 2, while Feng had advanced to level 3. Blackie informed his friend that he had obtained a bronze-level armor Feng had been needing. As they talked, they realized they were under attack. Their assailants aimed to take down the curse specialist first. Feng became extremely worried about his friend's safety. They had indeed been caught off guard. The assassin and his henchmen managed to inflict significant damage on Blackie. However, it wasn't enough to kill him, and Blackie quickly recognized his attackers. Completely enraged, he resolved not to go down alone. He would at least take someone with him. The assassin was confident he couldn't be defeated by someone as mediocre as a curse specialist. To his great surprise, he was nearly sent to the respawn area in a single attack. Even Blackie hadn't realized his attacks had become so powerful. The assassin tries to rally his companions, knowing their target has less than half his health left. They just need to coordinate. Rushing into the attack, he assumes the damage output comes from the player's equipment, not his level. This leaves him unnerved because he no longer knows what to do. A whirlwind of slashes occurs, completely overwhelming the attackers. Once again, he was obliterated by the same person, unable to believe the massive damage he had suffered. Feng had taken down 3 players as if they were weaker than the monsters. Blackie was now completely amazed at the strength his friend had achieved. Charging toward them, the arrogant leader advanced, refusing to believe the assassin had been defeated despite their numerical advantage. He ordered his lackeys to attack the 2 of them, declaring they would learn what happens to those who anger an arrogant fool. Before they could get close, Feng used a smoke bomb that blinded them. This was the opportunity they needed to begin their strategic retreat. This didn't anger the fool, who decided not to pursue them, thinking the area was perfect for gaining some levels. The lackeys were frightened because they knew this was a level 4 creature zone. Angrily, he explained what the player had done to the creatures amidst the smoke and said they should learn by watching as well. He ordered his warriors to lure the creatures into the smoke cloud while ranged attackers prepared to finish them off. Despite everything, the fool was an excellent strategist and his lackeys claimed he would soon become a great player. This method of gaining experience was easy and safe, promising significant growth for their guild. The fool dreamed of one day becoming the guild leader because of this. Rare items continued to drop as he encouraged his soldiers to keep fighting relentlessly. Lackey asked his friend if they would let things remain as they were or retaliate somehow. Feng said they would do nothing for now, as it was time for the others to learn more about the game. After a while, the smoke finally cleared. Now the creatures could clearly see their attackers, and they were far from pleased. Their eyes glowed with hatred as they identified their next victims. The creatures' eyes burned with fury. They wouldn't let any player leave alive. The lackeys were now genuinely terrified. The first creature leaped at them, charging full of rage. Its initial strike was devastating, almost slicing one of the lackeys in half. Smelling blood, the other creatures joined the fray for their amusement. These monsters were formidable warriors, and their axes thirsted for blood. Desperate, the fool ordered everyone to run and escape immediately. However, most of his lackeys had already been sliced apart. One hit from the creatures was fatal. They had worked hard to reach level 2, but all would be in vain as they would drop back to level 1 upon death. The beasts howled in rage, summoning even more creatures. A swarm of monsters pursued the fool as he tried to flee. Narrowly, he avoided being obliterated by an axe strike. The fool ran with all his might, determined to survive. Exhausted, he paused to catch his breath, having escaped the horde of enraged monsters. To his shock and utter displeasure, he found himself face to face with someone he didn't want to see, Feng, who asked what he was doing alone in such a place. Consumed by hatred, the fool attacked, convinced Feng had set him up. His powerful strike shattered the ground but failed to hit his target. Before he could figure out where Feng had gone, he was brutally struck in the back with a perfect slash. Mockingly, Feng told him he needed to work on his aim as he had been behind him the whole time. Reacting quickly, the fool attempted another axe strike, but missed again. Overwhelmed by rage, he promised to kill Feng so many times that he would never escape level 0. But no matter what he did, none of his attacks could land on Feng. It didn't take long for him to become completely exhausted from so many failed attempts. Provoking his opponent, he called him a coward for always dodging. Taking the bait, Feng said he would stand still this time. Seeing his opponent's arrogance, the fool charged in fury to end the fight. However, he was struck by a thunderous flash, which tore through his body completely. The fool felt the damage accumulating throughout his body. As Feng approached, he said he had promised to stay still, but hadn't guaranteed he wouldn't attack. As the fool vanished, Feng thanked him for gathering all those minerals for him. He vanished, swearing on his life that he wouldn't forget what had happened. As part of the penalties, he lost 100 proficiency points in all skills and was reduced by 1 level. Upon returning to the city, he asked his henchmen to check their inventories to report the total losses. The same was done by the fool, who searched his inventory window for a specific item. Realizing that the skill book he had obtained was lost with his defeat, filled with rage, he declared that they would return to that place immediately, refusing to let the book remain in Feng's possession. In the midst of his fury, he received a call. He wanted to know who dared interrupt such an important moment. It appeared to be a superior from his guild, as he answered with great politeness and respect, only to be harshly reprimanded for his temper. Zhang informed him that he was no longer a squad leader and warned that if he wasn't at level 2 upon arriving in the city, he better not bother playing the game. The call ended abruptly. This only fueled the fool's anger further, as he blamed Feng for everything. After gathering the ores, Blackie mentioned wanting to see the expression on the fool's face right about now. Skill attained. Wind Blade unleashes a flurry of short attacks while increasing attack and movement speed. Perfect for suppressing ranged attackers since it deals damage and boosts the attacker's speed. Blackie wanted a skill like that too, and Feng remarked that they would have to wait for the fool to return. He added that it was his first time finding a rock like this with a very dark green color. It was a very rare star crystal with a 1% appearance rate. Immediately, Blackie thought he had a treasure in his hands. Feng explained that for now, it was worthless, but would become valuable in the future. Unfortunately, his friend wouldn't understand the reasoning. Understanding just enough, Blackie decided to keep the stone until it gained value. They returned to the blacksmith, who praised the work they had done gathering all the ores. That had been the first stage of the quest. Now they needed to prove they were truly strong men. A hidden quest had been discovered. They had 1 hour to defeat the kobold boss. This was different from Feng's past life. He had never heard of a second stage for this quest. He knew the boss was a level 5 creature, as strong as a dungeon boss, requiring an entire team. He told his friend that they had received a reasonably difficult quest to complete. Blackie encouraged him, saying any quest was easy as long as Feng was the team leader. Feng reminded him that moments earlier, Blackie had doubted the information he provided. Once again, they headed to the mine, this time to complete the second stage of the quest. Prepared, it was time to start hunting once more. Feng charged forward with determination, ready to eliminate the cave's creatures. His barrage of attacks wiped out multiple monsters at once. Meanwhile, his friend provided support from a distance, taking down other monsters. Although strong, the creatures were numerous within the cave, forcing them to stay completely focused and immersed in battle. After some time, all that remained were bodies sprawled across the floor. Blackie found the fight surprisingly easy until Feng warned him that they hadn't yet reached the main part of the quest. A tremor began to spread through the cave. Blackie was certain that the dungeon boss was coming toward them this time. Its powerful steps sunk into the stone floor. Gazing at the massive creature, Feng declared it to be the main part of their mission. Blackie was terrified by the level 5 boss with over 2,000 health points and a regeneration ability. Feng noted that this special quest had a time limit, and they had less than 20 minutes remaining. The creature's boss began roaring furiously inside the cave. The mage doubted they could win, convinced that a single attack would be enough to kill them. He added that the consequences of failing the quest were even worse. Feng extended his hand toward his inventory, retrieving an item he had prepared for such an occasion. Faced with this challenge, he had no choice but to give it his all. Legend had it that one day, surrounded by countless enemies, the god of war drew his weapon and defeated them all, becoming renowned for his deeds. Feng also remembered those who had become slaves to their weapons due to their rebound effects. The system asked if he wanted to bind himself to the blade. This was a very delicate choice. If even brats could manipulate such a weapon, then surely as someone reincarnated, he wouldn't fail to do so. The system warned that this bond was irreversible and that all consequences would be the player's responsibility. After the assimilation, a dragon made of shadows emerged on the battlefield. The system announced that the binding to the magical weapon, an abyssal blade, had been successfully completed. Upon doing so, his level was reset to 0. Blackie couldn't understand why that happened, thinking it was a glitch. Feng reassured him, saying he was now much stronger than ever before. In addition to being powerful, the blade ignores 5 levels of monsters, deals double damage, and curses its enemies. The kobold boss began roaring, seemingly empowering its minions. Emboldened, the creatures charged at the 2 players. Feng told his friend to hide in a safe spot while he handled the situation, and Blackie eagerly accepted the suggestion. The player was ready to start slicing through the creatures as soon as they got close. He wielded his magical sword, prepared to defend himself immediately. As soon as the monsters entered his attack range, they were sliced apart as if made of paper. Blackie was utterly astonished by the strength his friend now possessed. It didn't take long for the boss to join the battle, forcing Feng to dodge an attack. The creature's gaze wasn't just hateful, it looked like it enjoyed using glitter bombs too. Despite being enormous, its attacks were quick, nearly splitting Feng in half. Blackie was horrified by the unexpected outcome. However, this was an ability Feng gained from his new sword, Phantom Death, which created a controllable clone. The dungeon boss realized and had struck a distraction, seeing that its true enemy was still alive. This time, Feng charged forward, determined to slice through the monster. Unleashing Wind Blade against it, he dealt over 100 points of damage in a single strike. He then launched a barrage of slashes, dealing continuous damage. But his attack turn wasn't over yet. Dancing around the boss, he delivered devastating, thunderous flash strikes. After this relentless assault, the creature's health was reduced by half, and the battle shifted direction, as it endured the one-sided beating. When the creature's abilities activated, doubling its attack power. Feng was confident that unless the creature had gotten faster, the increase in attack power would be completely irrelevant. The strikes proved to be far more devastating. Feng needed to be cautious. One hit could mean the end for him. The boss used its secret glitter powder, doubling its attack speed. This was definitely not good for Feng. Oblivious to the danger, his friend executed an almost ineffective attack. He did this out of concern for Feng, realizing that his strongest attack was equivalent to one of Feng's basic strikes. The creature's eyes burned with rage, eager to repay the damage with interest rates worthy of a loan shark. Seeing the creature change targets after that attack, Feng ordered Blackie to flee immediately. But the fool tripped over the ground. He thought this would be the first time he'd die in the game, decapitated by a giant axe, until he decided to open his eyes and saw several chains in the cavern. The creature had been restrained. This was the abyssal bond. It halved the creature's defense and immobilized it for 3 seconds. With an incredibly narrow margin for error, Feng had saved his friend's life. However, the creature had now freed itself from its restraints. Feng approached the creature's face again, its eyes wide with glitter-induced madness. At close range, the player prepared to use his wind blade. He executed a massive strike against the creature's face. This was Blackie's cue to leave, knowing he couldn't contribute to this fight. Despite the devastating attacks, the monster was still alive. Feng had to dodge one of its axe strikes, which would have been fatal to him. Even as it suffered severe damage, the dungeon boss continued fighting fiercely. Through successive dodges, Feng managed to gain a bit more distance. The monster prepared to use its most powerful attack, reminiscent of Saya Nappa's signature move, a concentrated energy ball from its mouth. From the ball emerged countless creatures. They began scuttling across the cavern floor toward Feng. He quickly realized this was the boss's strategy to buy time. His only choice was to use a risky skill, but he didn't know how long he could control so many blades with his current power. Given the gravity of the situation, he didn't have time to think about it. He had to take the risk. The beasts charged furiously, ready to turn him into a quick snack. Before they could get close, they were swiftly cut into several pieces. As expected, it was extremely difficult for Feng to control those new swords. He directed all of them toward his enemy. The blades struck the creature's flesh, causing small explosions. The monster writhed in agony as its health dropped to critical levels. Feng needed just one more attack to end the battle once and for all. However, before he could execute it, he felt a deep pain coursing through his entire body. The blades he had summoned shattered and ceased to exist. Due to his limited physical power, his body was now paralyzed. If it dropped to zero, he would be forcibly removed from the game and unable to return for some time. Blackie, watching from a distance, grew worried about his friend's condition. Seeing that the boss was still alive, he urged Feng not to push himself too hard, as time was short and the risk of failure was too great. The thought of giving up reminded Feng of his past life. He had worked tirelessly, only to be discarded as if he were worthless. Inexplicably, he had been sent back 10 years in time. He didn't know if it was a blessing or a curse. What he did know was that he wouldn't give up at a moment like this. Determined to rewrite the course of his destiny, he stepped forward firmly. Using the ring's abilities, which reduced gravity's effects, he leaped toward the creature with all his power. He and his clone prepared to deliver the final blow. The creature's eyes widened, fully aware of what was happening. It was taken by surprise when precise strikes hit its eyes. Afterward, it was subjected to a barrage of powerful attacks. With his eyes rendered useless, the creature struck wildly in desperation. Feng expertly utilized his clone, coordinating with it like a team. Using the clone as a springboard, he closed the distance to the creature. This time, a dark aura began to envelop the tip of his sword. The wind blade penetrated the creature with destructive force. Finally, he had defeated it, earning experience and completing the hidden quest. Blackie lamented in the corner of the cave, feeling he hadn't contributed at all. After the battle, he admitted that what Feng had done was truly incredible. One of the items they obtained was a rare book specifically for curse specialists. Blackie's luck was extraordinary. He still didn't know how his luck would serve him, given that he hadn't helped during the battles. He wanted to learn from his friend how to become a better player so he could feel more useful. He assumed he should allocate all his attribute points to intelligence. To his surprise, Feng promptly corrected him. This left Blackie with a significant doubt. Feng reminded him that just minutes earlier, the giant axe had almost split him in two. Indeed, it had been his first near-death experience in the game. Feng stated that without his intervention, Blackie would have already respawned in the city center. He explained that if Blackie had more agility, he could not only evade attacks, but also cast spells more quickly. Among the various items they had obtained was a robe that could be very useful for him. Additionally, he should keep the skill book, which was very rare. It taught Evil Whip, a skill that dealt damage over time while immobilizing the target. The skill was very powerful, causing Blackie's eyes to light up like stars. Feng emphasized that the skill had a 3-second cast time, so Blackie needed to plan his target's positioning in advance. Having received several items, Blackie now wore much stronger armor. The same was true for Feng, who was now well equipped. Returning to the blacksmith, Feng could finally inherit his forging skills. He received the title Forge Genius. For every successfully forged item, he would gain 2 proficiency points. Blackie, upon realizing it was only 2 points, felt the skill wouldn't be very useful. Feng warned him not to underestimate those numbers. With 1,000 points, he would become an intermediate apprentice. As a genius, his progress would be significantly accelerated. Blackie asked if his friend could forge an item for him, but it would require both a blueprint and materials. In the Deadly Forest, they could obtain bronze equipment blueprints highly coveted by beginner players. As they left, Feng asked Blackie to follow him into the forest. The blacksmith then noticed the peculiar sword at Feng's waist. Before they left, the blacksmith asked them to wait a moment. He inquired if it was truly a magical weapon, and if it was what he suspected, said it was steeped in a curse. He warned that the curse might already be affecting Feng's body. Despite his vast experience, this was the first time the blacksmith had seen such an item in person. Excited, he asked to examine the weapon up close. Feng thought this might be a hidden quest in the game. He allowed the blacksmith to inspect the item. It had been forged by a renowned craftsman using a dragon's fang. Among the 36 famous swords, this one was number 31. Occasionally, it could impose a severe penalty on its wielder, permanently halving your attributes. The curse's side effects had already started spreading through Feng's body. Moreover, there was no way to break the curse. There was a method to weaken it, but it required something of immense power. The only items capable of resisting the curse were lucky stones. Unfortunately, these were incredibly rare. Surprisingly, they already had one such stone, and Blackie had it. Initially, they had called the item a star crystal, unaware of its unique effects. Hearing this, the blacksmith was very impressed with Feng. In his previous life, those stones eventually became so valuable that they turned into a parallel currency within the game. With the necessary materials in hand, the blacksmith was eager to work on the magical weapon. He began heating the forge. All of his focus was on creating an even more powerful item. The abyssal blade was enhanced, and its curse was significantly suppressed. Storing his newly improved item, Feng thanked the blacksmith for his work. Feng received a message from the player who had helped him at the beginning of his journey. Grateful, the player wanted to repay the favor and offered more tips in exchange for items useful for their profession. Feng informed Blackie that they had been invited to a dungeon in the Deadly Forest. Blackie thought they did need to join others. However, for this specific dungeon, they required a minimum number of players, which would also increase their chances of success. At the portal, several players were forming groups to enter the Deadly Forest. Feng soon met the player he had helped earlier, who once again thanked him for the hunting spot tip. That player had reached level 2 very quickly, unlike his friends who had to work much harder. With Feng's guidance, they expected to clear the dungeon quickly. However, his friends seemed unconvinced of Feng's efficiency. They grew even more irritated when they discovered he was still at level 1. One of them began to question whether waiting for a level 1 specialist had been worth it. Trying to act tough, one player asked Feng if he thought they were fools. Another began to berate him, saying it was unacceptable to still be at level 1 after the servers had been open for so long. The mage called Feng audacious for attempting to give orders to others despite being so mediocre. Feng and Blackie decided to leave the group, a move that was praised by the warrior. Before leaving, Feng said Lone Snow could join them if he wanted. The decision was his. After a brief thought, Lone Snow decided to give the player who helped him at the start of the game a chance. His friends were deeply concerned, believing he had been tricked by a scammer. However, Lone Snow was genuinely enthusiastic about following this mysterious specialist. Blackie encouraged them, saying they had made the right choice and wouldn't regret it. Feng told his friend to prepare by activating all the special options on his staff. Blackie did so immediately, leaving the rookie even more astonished. Now they were searching for 3 more players to complete their team. One player noticed that the items carried by the cursed specialist were extraordinary. Wielding his expensive staff, Blackie began scouting for team members. Now those who had rejected them were filled with regret. Even though the mage was powerful, they still believed a level 1 leader was useless. With this in mind, they hatched a bold plan to convince the cursed specialist to join their group with an enticing proposal. When they received a quick reply, they assumed they had succeeded, but they were met with a surprisingly sharp rejection. The mage was pleased, relieved he wouldn't have to share any class-specific items. After everything that had happened, the young man became extremely upset with Blackie's refusal to join his team. The players continued searching for members to form their teams. Some used Feng as an example, saying he was just a beginner who would enter the forest only to be killed. Since he was level 1, finding new members was going to be challenging. Feng told Blackie to stay calm, as everything would work out. He noticed the players suddenly began running in a specific direction, as though something significant was happening there. They were completely captivated by the beauty of a woman. Even Blackie was impressed, struggling to believe what he was seeing. A powerful girl with stunning hair and extremely full, perfectly round, symmetrical breasts had appeared. Accompanying her were 2 other equally famous beauties with exceptional skills. All the players were mesmerized by the beauty of Miss Snow. She walked past them, completely ignoring everyone. Feng recognized this player and wondered what she was doing there. The wicked blonde glanced to the side, observing how easily impressed the players were. Blackie was just another among them, caught in the genjutsu of that stunning woman. Feng had to use firm methods to snap him back to reality. The other player's greatest dream was to join this group of beautiful women. The powerful blonde declared that none of them were even remotely decent enough to be useful for the task. A very effeminate young man thought he had a chance with them and used all his charm to approach. But his strategy failed quickly, as even his friends, who should have helped, were too clueless to act. The wicked blonde demanded they leave immediately, or she would burn them to the bone. The other players were now even more impressed by her strength, desperate to become her followers. However, the wicked blonde ordered them to leave immediately, calling them a waste of time. After that, she scared off every single player in the area. Blackie observed everything and was extremely frightened by the wicked blonde's behavior. In Feng's past life, she was known as the Flame Witch. One day, she was harassed by a guild leader. Overnight, she wiped out all 10,000 of his members, killing the leader repeatedly until he dropped to level 0. The powerful girl noticed that Feng was the only one among the guys who completely ignored her. The blonde wanted to know who she was staring at. She revealed that Feng was very peculiar. Now the wicked blonde was curious about who this person was. She couldn't believe Miss Snow could be interested in a level 1 player. She assumed he was merely pretending to be uninterested to grab their attention, a typical tactic among men. Even so, Gentle Snow decided to approach this young man. She wanted to know if he truly had the courage to enter the deadly forest at level 1. Feng stated that if he was looking for teammates, it was because he was capable. He asked if she was interested in joining his team, which infuriated the wicked blonde. Gentle Snow noted that Feng's companion had several bronze items, indicating they had some level of talent, not to mention the unusual hilt of the sword Feng carried. To the blonde, it was just junk, but Gentle Snow suspected there was a purpose to its appearance. The wicked blonde demanded to know how he knew the strategy to complete the deadly forest, as this dungeon had never been cleared. Feng claimed he had met someone who tested the beta version, a claim Gentle Snow doubted. To the blonde, he was lying blatantly, but Feng insisted it was up to her whether to believe him, explaining that the real danger of the forest was getting lost inside. Newbies would be wiped out before even encountering their first monster. Unable to find the exit, players would resort to suicide to escape. Other players were startled by this story, wondering if it was true. Pointing to people who had just returned, Feng said they could confirm the information firsthand. Gentle Snow was intrigued, although her companion insisted it must be a lie. Now, Gentle Snow was inclined to cooperate with him to overcome the dungeon. Turning to her companions, she announced they would form a team with them. The mage blushed as she seemed to be interested in the peculiar young man. The wicked blonde, however, couldn't bring herself to trust him. Convinced he must have hidden motives, Gentle Snow assured her that everything would become clear once they entered the dungeon. The players observing the interaction were stunned to see those beauties choose a team. Blackie was even more impressed with his friend's skill, managing to get those gorgeous women to join them. Even another player seemed pleased now that they had a full team. Prepared, they stood before the portal, ready to enter the deadly forest. Feng was the first to cross the dimensional portal. It didn't take long for everyone to step into the forest. The system notified them that the death penalty here was increased, but so were the rewards and the chance of finding rare items. This only made the blonde even angrier, realizing the team leader had chosen Hell Mode difficulty. Even Blackie grew concerned about his friend's choice. The hostile blonde threatened that if this turned out to be trouble for them, Feng would pay for it. Feng tried to reassure the group, saying he wouldn't make a choice he wasn't confident in. Another player asked which direction they should take. Feng explained that the map showed many twists and crossroads, so they should stick close to him to avoid getting lost. Leading the way, he said this was the path they needed to take. The mage was still hesitant to trust him, but Gentle Snow agreed to follow for now. With that, the group began their journey deeper into the forest. Shadow only obtained the map of the forest after sending hundreds of players to explore it. There were 36 paths in total, but only 3 led to the first boss. Feng already knew this and was determined to clear the dungeon. The blonde remained skeptical of the path while Gentle Snow remarked that, so far, they had avoided all the monsters. A group of creatures began patrolling the intersection they had just passed. If they had been slower, they would have had to fight. The blonde argued there were only a few creatures and that they shouldn't be afraid. Feng pointed out that those creatures didn't drop valuable items, so fighting them would be a waste of time. With some disdain toward him, the blonde and the other player didn't want to show how weak their attacks were. Blackie predicted that the area ahead would be where they faced the dungeon's first boss. As soon as they entered the clearing, he was surprised to find no creatures present. However, a sudden tremor in the ground left everyone tense. Feng instructed everyone to prepare as the first boss was coming. A mysterious creature emerged from the ground. It landed before them, a meg rabbit, ferocious and far more dangerous than it looked. The rabbit displayed its massive, sharp claws to the players. Though its appearance wasn't particularly menacing, it fed exclusively on human flesh. Another player was stunned that the first creature they encountered was the boss. Feng remarked that this was better, as the other monsters didn't have good drops. Gentle Snow appeared ready, her sword in hand. Feng asked her to serve as the tank for this battle, while the others would focus on distracting the creature. The mage didn't seem to understand the concept. The tank's role, Feng explained, was to draw the creature's attention. This allowed the other players to attack without becoming targets themselves. The tank needed to have a lot of health points. Otherwise, they could be taken down in a single hit. Feng assured them he would provide further instructions during the fight. For now, they needed to focus on the battle. Impulsively, one player charged in without any strategy. Feng wondered why there was such a rush, especially since the mage hadn't even cast blessings yet. Unfortunately, the warrior couldn't cancel his skill mid-charge. As Feng tried to stop him, he tripped over a rock. Even the creature seemed confused by what it was witnessing. Regardless, it saw this as an excellent opportunity to eliminate one of its enemies. The player was now terrified, convinced he was about to die. But Blackie wouldn't let that happen, quickly casting his own enchantments. The monster was now completely immobilized by roots emerging from the ground. Grateful for being saved, the warrior thanked Blackie. With the creature restrained, he had an opportunity to attack without retaliation. He lunged forward with a direct headbutt, but the rabbit proved far tougher than the player. This brief interaction caused the player to lose significantly more health than the creature. The hostile blonde was astonished at the warrior's lack of intelligence, likening him to a cannonball. Meanwhile, the mage began casting supportive spells to aid in the fight. She restored the health points the warrior had lost due to his reckless attack. The vines restraining the rabbit were reaching their limit. The creature began breaking free, and Blackie admitted that was as much as he could do. Determined to redeem himself, the warrior prepared for another attack. This time, he managed to unleash a barrage of slashes. He and the monster engaged in close combat. Feng noticed that Gentle Snow's movements were very deliberate, showcasing her technical skill. Now the players were able to launch an effective offensive against the creature. The wicked blonde ordered everyone to step aside as she prepared to cast a powerful spell. The warrior narrowly avoided being obliterated by friendly fire. The creature was hit by the attack, losing some health in the process. This made the blonde very pleased, realizing that her attack had been the most powerful so far. Even so, the creature showed no signs of fatigue or exhaustion. It had entered a frenzy state, increasing its attack power and speed by 30%. Gentle Snow assumed the monster's attention had turned to the player who had dealt that damage. Immediately, the wicked blonde began to worry, because an enraged human flesh-eating rabbit was now hyper-focused on her presence. Dealing too much damage in a single attack had produced a very risky result for her. With the creature's increased speed, the monster closed the distance to the blonde very quickly, but it failed in its attack as Feng intercepted it with his strike. The blonde squinted her eyes to shield herself from the flying debris. Even though it had gotten close to her, the rabbit had already shifted its focus. Feng warned the others that the boss's increased damage was dangerous. Since he was the most agile in the team, he would take responsibility for distracting it. The blonde couldn't argue with the strategy as it kept her safe. However, General Snow was very concerned about the risk Feng was taking with this plan. The rabbit's increased speed made it a challenge even for Feng. After taking a hit and blocking an attack, Feng needed to recover his stance. But he had almost no time to do so, as the rabbit's relentless attack was back on him in an instant. Getting close enough, the creature used its special attack, Lethal Claws. Waves of cutting energy surged toward the player. Feng's agility proved useful, allowing him to block the attack with relative ease. While defending himself, the creature had returned to the ground. It launched another devastating attack toward the player. The rabbit began spinning on its axis like a drill, destroying everything in its path. Feng knew he couldn't take this attack head-on. He did his best to evade it, but eventually had to block the attack using his magical sword. Even while defending, he continued to take continuous damage. With the monster stationary in front of him, General Snow took the opportunity to assist. With a single kick, he managed to launch the rabbit away, giving Feng time to recover. The rabbit started getting up, still disoriented from the blow. During this window of opportunity, the mage cast another healing spell. While being healed, Feng noted that the rabbit was weaker now. Everyone should attack while its defense was lowered. He firmly reminded his teammates not to attract the creature's attention. The blonde said nothing but internally seethed with anger at being indirectly scolded. The team resumed their attacks on the rabbit, whose health was now significantly reduced. They just needed to hold on a bit longer. At this pace, the monster wouldn't withstand their attacks. Feng was preparing to deliver a powerful strike, but the wicked blonde didn't want to be outdone by someone she considered mediocre. She caused multiple explosions to rain down on the creature. Finally, the boss had been defeated, dropping several items upon its death. Blackie assumed that all those items must be very valuable. Feng advised the others to recover before collecting the loot. The girls decided to follow his good advice. Feng noted that the final boss often caught players off guard, but it was possible to defeat it with the right approach. The warrior began to wonder if there were any surprises ahead. The sound of breaking rocks reached their ears. A dangerous creature radiating intense red energy had just emerged. It was an angry werewolf, a level 3 boss. However, the players were ready for it, and the malice in their eyes was evident. This made the boss wonder if something was amiss. Before it could come to a conclusion, the players had already launched their attack. This time, the werewolf was the one caught off guard. Feng led the charge, wielding his sword with fury. A great cloud of dust rose in the clearing. It didn't take long for the boss to be completely subdued. With the victory, they gained more items and skill books. The wicked blonde admitted that those items were indeed very good. Gentle Snow kept her promise, allowing the boys to choose their items first. Feng was very excited because on his first attempt, he managed to design armor. The other guys are also very pleased with the items they got. Blackie immediately equips the items he had chosen. The same is done by the warrior, who learned a new attack. The mean blonde is completely upset, imagining that all the good items have already been taken. However, the mage made a point of reminding everyone that none of them would have been able to conquer that dungeon without Feng's guidance. Solitary Snow was very surprised by what she had received and made sure to thank Feng. Even the mean blonde was surprised to realize that they had received a potion recipe, which is extremely valuable at this stage of the game. Feng stated that their work was also very valuable. Although she said nothing, it was clear from the mean blonde's expression that she now had conflicting feelings toward Feng. Outside, the bystanders were discussing which team would finish the dungeon first, until a game notification appeared congratulating Feng's team for being the first to complete the Deadly Forest. All the players outside could do was stand in shock. The portal began to open and Feng's team emerged from it. Some players noticed that everyone had new equipment. Solitary Snow wanted to know if Feng would like to join her guild Ouroboros, but Feng declined. She respected his decision but told him that in 3 days they would embark on an unexplored 20-player dungeon expedition. She wanted to know if they would like to join. Feng warned that to enter that dungeon, the Dark Moon, players needed to be at level 5. Perhaps she wouldn't be able to gather 20 people. Hearing this, Solitary Snow smiled as she knew her guild's capabilities. This was the largest guild among the dozens of virtual games out there. Early on, major conglomerates had invested in God's domain. Everyone wanted to stake their claim in the game. Solitary Snow asked to be added as a friend so she could notify him when the time came. Feng said he would participate, provided he could have priority over swordsman items and designs. The mean blonde said he lacked any humility. Blackie was very impressed that his friend had received a friend request from such a beauty. Other players recognized the guys as those who had accompanied the beauties into the dungeon. Now they were filled with the most genuine hatred. Blackie and the warrior started getting nervous about this gratuitous hostility. Without a second thought, Feng ordered them to start running away from the area. Despite everything, the players wanted to know how they managed to avoid the traps and complete the dungeon. The portal opened, it led to the Black Moon Valley. The recommended level was 4. The warrior wanted to know why there weren't more players there. Feng said the others were focused on the Deadly Forest. Few would dare venture there. A running player approached them asking to be added to their team. Feng noticed the name was familiar. It was Tyrant Bear, a guardian knight from the kingdom of Starmoon. Almost out of breath, he was happy to have found someone. His journey had started turbulently, even being expelled from some mediocre teams, Eventually, he managed to join the Radiant Stars Guild, becoming very famous. Fang knew that recruiting this player now would make his future much easier. The guy said he had been killing some creatures but hadn't encountered any players. He was glad to have found a team to join. Blackie wanted to know if he had really been killing creatures alone. The guy said it was only possible thanks to his ability to endure a lot of damage. What impressed the other two was not just his high defense but also his survivability. The warrior told Fang that a tank like this player would be very reliable in his role. Since Fang knew of him from his previous life, he invited the guy to join his team. This made the warrior very happy because he could now focus on dealing damage. The guy noticed they were missing a healer. He said he had a friend, but he was an oracle. The warrior said that was the most useless class among mages, given its low healing capabilities. Fang explained that oracles had high vitality and could convert damage into health, which wouldn't overburden the tank. The oracle was called Sleepy Sloth. He was level 2 and very happy to have joined a team. He had even been considering deleting his account and starting over, but Fang told him the most important thing was the player behind the character. With the team assembled, they prepared to pass through the portal. On the other side, the goblins were talking. They were very excited that players had shown up there. They were eager to start killing. He just didn't expect the tank to possess such an ignorant level of strength and defense. He smiles enthusiastically while using the taunt ability, drawing the creatures toward himself. Meanwhile, the warrior starts dealing damage to the creatures, exterminating several of them with his whirlwind slash. Blackie is also using the ability he had learned, the infernal flames. The poor creatures are incinerated until they turn to ashes. A rapid barrage of slashes is unleashed. Fang passes through the creatures without them even noticing him. Blackie is very happy, assuming this dungeon is way too easy. Some creatures are fleeing in fear. The tank is impressed with the amount of ore they managed to obtain, as it's worth a lot of money here. Suddenly, the sky turns dark, which piques his curiosity. A massive metal golem joins the battlefield. The oracle is scared, not understanding why a boss appeared in that place. A sudden event has been triggered in the game. That boss is level 5 and ignores 95% of all incoming damage. Blackie asks the leader what the plan is for this situation, but Fang is paralyzed with fear. He immediately orders everyone to flee that place as it is extremely dangerous. They need to reach the dungeon entrance, which is beyond the creature's patrol area. In his past life, he had encountered it as well. He was accompanied by excellent players and believed they could defeat the creature. The excitement stemmed from the fact that rarely enemies often drop unique items. However, their attempt ended in complete failure. They were easily defeated, with no chance of victory. The monster noticed the players were trying to flee. This caused it to start firing its weapons in their direction. The projectiles narrowly missed them in a dangerous manner. Blackie begins to feel quite apprehensive. He decides to attack as well since he can do so from a distance, just like the creature. Even though he hits it, his attack deals only 1 point of damage. This makes him realize just how impressive the boss's defense is. Fang warns about the monster's defense and suggests that if they are going to use mana, it's better to focus on slow and control abilities. Following the guidance, he turns to restrain the boss. This time, he uses the Sinister Whip, pinning the creature to the ground. Meanwhile, the players increase their distance from the creature. However, that attack begins to deal much more damage than expected. Fang, observing this, starts to suspect that the boss must have some sort of weakness to plant-based attacks. Knowing this, he orders everyone to stop and shares his discovery. It's time for them to retaliate. The strategy is simple. They will stretch the fight as long as possible. Blackie will be in charge of the attack, while the others serve as distractions. The warrior is very enthusiastic about this plan, charging at the boss full of determination. However, his most powerful attack is incapable of dealing more than 1 point of damage. Unexpectedly, the flurry of strikes manages to stun the creature. With the boss distracted, Blackie uses the Sinister Whip once again. The boss's health is decreasing steadily. To avoid being defeated, it quickly frees itself from its binds. It just didn't expect that another player was already above its head. The tank uses a Divine Strike, which deals significant physical damage and draws the enemy's attention to the attacker. The golem reacts by attacking the player, who manages to defend himself with his shield. Even though he blocks, he loses half of his health in that brief interaction. Once again, the mage uses the Sinister Whip to restrain the creature. The tank flees desperately, begging to be healed, as another hit would be fatal. The oracle does the best he can, but his healing ability is too slow. Fang moves to the front line to shift the creature's focus and let the tank recover safely. He manages to bind the boss with the Abyssal Tether, attacking the creature with Thunderous Flash, delivering several strikes that cannot be blocked. Inside the golem, the creature imagines that these players must have a very strong death wish. To escape the boss, Fang uses the ring's gravity control ability. He climbs the cliff while dodging the attacks. Gaining enough distance, he resumes attacking with his slashes. But he doesn't aim at the creature. He targets the cliff, causing boulders to fall. The rocks hit the monster, dealing significant damage. It is now trapped under the stones with its health greatly compromised. A small compartment opens. The goblin abandons the golem and mockingly begins to bid farewell to the players. They are furious that the creature is planning to flee the battlefield. Fang is consumed by the shadows of his cursed sword. He doesn't want to let the monster escape. Intelligent monsters like this one are far too rare. This opportunity cannot be missed. But the swords he had summoned were aimed at it. The creature, terrified, managed to dodge the attack by mere centimeters, continuing its desperate escape. Unfortunately, the creature succeeded in fleeing. Feng was now impressed because with a game notification, he discovered that it was Arcus Maddox, a very famous Grandmaster engineer in the game universe. In 3 years, he would create the Sky Fortress and later the Gnome Empire. He hadn't expected to encounter one of the game's final bosses in that place. The Oracle said there was only a small chest inside the robot. Upon opening it, they found a treasure map, a satisfying reward for the effort they had put in. He told his team that after this, no strong creatures would appear. They had an excellent opportunity to level up. Walking away from his team, he said he would go collect the treasure. Centuries ago, a powerful alchemist created the Philosopher's Stone, capable of transmuting elements and reviving the dead. To access it, one must have Arcus Maddox's chest. He went to Crimson Lake. The recommended level for this area is 10. Feng dived in anyway because he was determined. At the bottom of the lake, he encountered a massive creature. By using the Gravity Ring's abilities, he managed to move quickly underwater, gaining enough distance to stay safe. Facing an underwater gorge, he found something even more dangerous. The Philosopher's Stone lay along that path, but level 10 mermen were formidable guards. Determined not to fight, he used his clone to distract the creatures. Immediately, the monsters began chasing the clone, leaving the path clear for Feng to continue his exploration. He entered the cave and found a large iron gate. The key he had collected needed to be used there. He inserted the item into the designated slot. The iron gate opened, emanating large circles of energy. This was the portal Feng needed to pass through. He finally managed to enter the Sun Temple. There was no recommended level for this place, which was highly dangerous. In front of him stood 2 enormous statues clad in armor. Feng patiently climbed the stairs toward the treasure. He came across a small chest that was guarded within the cave. Upon attempting to open it, a bright light began to emerge. Feng was immediately struck by what he saw. In his hands was the Philosopher's Stone, a much smaller item than he had expected. The item was just one of 5 fragments, but it was enough to help him forge equipment. After collecting a fragment, the statues guarding the place came to life. Both were level 100 monsters. Feng knew that with his current strength he couldn't defeat them, but the game developers wouldn't leave him without an option. The skeleton nearby carried a teleportation scroll. This was his only chance to escape. He used the item immediately to return to the city center. To his dismay, there was a cooldown period before the item could take effect. Meanwhile, one of the statues launched a devastating attack toward him. Feng could only watch, completely powerless as his destruction approached. Despite the tension, the teleportation was successfully completed just before the explosion occurred. The destruction was so massive that the mermen realized something had happened inside the cave. Assuming the treasure had been taken, they became enraged. They would now direct their vengeance against humanity. A general game notification was issued. The Merman Uprising had been activated. Interested players should head to the Adventurers Guild to participate. Players were very excited about the possibility of obtaining rare items from this event. The mean blonde wanted to know who was behind this mission. Gentle Snow said they didn't even need to guess because Feng was certainly responsible for it. The mean blonde knew that Crimson Lake was a level 10 area. Apparently, not even a place like that could stop Feng from achieving his goals. Growing increasingly suspicious, the mean blonde wanted to know what he was hiding from them. Feng sneezed, thinking someone must be talking about him somewhere. However, he acknowledged that he had only escaped alive by pure luck. Back in the city, he came across the auction house. This was where some players sold the materials they collected by defeating creatures. Feng intended to sell the items he no longer needed there. Immediately, some players were shocked because several high-quality items were now available for sale. With the Philosopher's Stone fragment, Feng could refine common items into rare ones, making his life easier. Shortly after registering the items, he began buying all the magic stones and essences available. The girl who had collected these items was very surprised by how quickly they sold. Another player, noticing the opportunity, ran to inform others to collect these stones because they were selling out very quickly. Inside the auction house, they want to know who this wealthy person is. Outside, Feng is planning how he will use the Philosopher's Stone. Using a few coins, he managed to rent the forge for 1 hour. The place looks abandoned. The available tools are all of low quality, but this is all he can get for just 10 copper coins. Even so, he begins the refinement process. On his first attempt, he feels apprehensive as he fails. Even after failing, he decides to keep trying because he knows he will succeed soon. He tries a second time but fails again. After failing repeatedly, Feng acknowledges that his luck is very poor, or perhaps a single fragment isn't enough. While pondering, he notices a different ore among the materials. Out of all his attempts, only one is successful. That is more than enough to fill him with determination. Gradually, Feng starts increasing his success rate. Even so, the process becomes exhausting for him. His effort proves worthwhile as he manages to gather almost 500 copper ores. Afterward, the time he rented the space for runs out. He was so focused on refining the ore that he didn't have the chance to try forging an item. Additionally, he spent all of his money buying ores until he realized the items he had put up for sale were purchased. Some of the items were quite expensive, yet they were sold. Now he can rent the small forging hall, which is better equipped. For 2 silver coins, he can use the space for 2 hours. This space also has items that can assist in the forging process. This time, he is confident he will have much more success. Feng looks at his system window, contemplating what he can create. Full of enthusiasm, he is delighted with the start of his life as a blacksmith. Placing a piece of copper on the table, he begins to work, hammering it repeatedly. Eventually, he successfully creates armor. On his first attempt, the item even has an additional attribute. He is certain it will be highly coveted. Now he focuses on producing items, aiming to make as many as possible within the rented time. Time passes and his character grows tired. By the end, he not only gains 2 levels, but also creates 23 complete sets of armor ready to be sold. Players seeing those items for sale are excited about the quality of the materials. With a growing demand for them, Feng knows he will profit 4 silver coins from each set. The armor sets are selling very quickly. Browsing the shop, he sees very rare skill books available. He notices the player who listed them. It's one of the jerk's subordinates. They are trying to strengthen the guild at all costs. Feng knows those words are deceitful. The only thing the jerk is good at is deceiving his subordinates. Now he will buy the skill books with great pleasure. But before doing so, he receives a message from General Snow. She wants to ask for his help with something. Feng finds it odd because he knows it's not like her to make such requests. She needs to borrow money as she is competing with other guilds to purchase equipment. After explaining the situation, she asks if Feng was the one who forged those items. Being a terrible liar, he says no. Ending the call, he tells her he will send her the money. But he is surprised by the girl's intuition. Large guilds have a lot of money. They are competing for the armor sets, causing the prices to skyrocket. A young man says he managed to gather 13 silver coins and is confident he can buy 2 sets. But he takes too long. Each set of armor now costs 9 silver coins. With plenty of money, Feng rents an intermediate forging hall for 10 hours. It seems there is still much profit to be made from this situation. Feng continues working hard in the forge. He becomes so focused that he barely notices the passage of time. In a moment of distraction, he lets one of the materials slip away. The system notifies him that he has created an unknown armor, increasing his proficiency. Now he feels very fortunate for having created an original piece of equipment. This type of item cannot be found in the game world. It can only be crafted. To maintain authorship, he adds his signature to the item. This mark cannot be removed and establishes a brand for his work. Now he can not only sell the armor, but also the blueprint that created it, generating significant profit. Master blacksmiths are highly sought after by guilds due to the unique attributes their items can possess. However, the probability of creating original items is very low. He truly was lucky. Making those armors depleted his materials faster than expected, so now he would put some up for sale. Once again, he went to the auction house. He noticed that the number of players there had decreased significantly. Asking one player, he discovered that another blacksmith was selling items, a cheaper armor with lower attributes, which had eliminated the demand for Feng's items. Dio Striker was the name of this player. In his past life, he was the one who discovered the Master Forging quest. Additionally, he was directly involved in Feng's expulsion from the Shadow Guild. On the game forums, he began to defame Feng's crafted items, which made Feng extremely angry. Since the game was still very new, Feng quickly realized that Dio Striker was losing money by selling those cheap armors. But this time, Feng wouldn't let that happen. He listed his new armors for sale at the same price as his competitor. Acting convincingly, he praised his own shimmering armor as truly fabulous. Some players became upset for having bought the barbaric armor, which had a horrible appearance. Soon, the news started spreading across the server, reaching other cities. Dio Striker felt like a celebrity as he was being sought out by several guild leaders. And for now, he didn't intend to join any mediocre guild. What he wanted was to steal the fame and popularity of the mysterious blacksmith. It was only a matter of time before he would be sought after by the biggest guilds, until he was informed that the guilds no longer had any interest in his items. He couldn't believe what was happening and became extremely angry. Checking for himself, he confirmed that there was no one left there. He soon found out the reason. There was much better armor being sold for the same price. Dio Striker was becoming increasingly furious with the situation. This way, he would never achieve notoriety. In the real world, he was outraged, imagining that the mysterious blacksmith must also be investing a lot of money into this. He was determined to continue the fight because he wanted to see how far the mysterious blacksmith was willing to go. Checking the cost of raw materials, he decided to make some calls, hoping that if everything went well, he wouldn't have to worry about money in the future. He asked the guild leader for a loan of 10,000 credits. After getting the money, he returned to the game forum to make another announcement. This time, he reduced the price of his armor by 1 silver coin. Feng couldn't believe he was still willing to continue this price war, so he did the same. Amid this commercial war, other players wanted to see how it would end, as they were the biggest beneficiaries. When Dio Striker learned that the mysterious blacksmith had also lowered his price, he no longer knew what to do. Continuing to lower prices wasn't a solution. In fact, it was quite the opposite. Even so, unwilling to give up, that's exactly what he did. The barbaric armor now cost 2 silver coins or 30 copper coins. What he didn't expect was that the mysterious blacksmith could do more than just lower prices. With the armor design in hand, major guilds could train their own blacksmiths. Meanwhile, prices kept dropping in the market. The coup de grace was the armor design being put up for sale. Now there was no competing against that. Cornered and burdened with debt, all he could do was leave the game permanently. Rumors spread that Deal Striker's health had deteriorated after being defeated by the mysterious blacksmith. Feng was pleased with the outcome of his actions, as he had managed to destroy one of his enemies from his past life. A woman tripped and fell, spilling the drinks she was carrying. A player told her she must be very foolish. Selling that kind of thing in the game was completely useless. The jerk told her he had already shared his real-world address and would teach her how to make money. Some players strongly disapproved of the jerk's behavior, bullying a girl. Hearing this, Feng went over to confront the guy about what he had heard. He said he would kill the players so many times that he would return to level 0. He also told the others that they were all cowards pretending to be heroes. Feng knew that this girl named Violet Cloud would become one of the greatest allies in the game's future. That was reason enough for him to decide to teach this troublesome player a lesson. In his past life, she had belonged to the same guild as Gentle Snow. Both had left Ouroboros. It didn't take long for her to become an S-tier ally, rising to the top of her class and becoming one of the game's top 10 players. Instead of receiving help like the others, she did everything through her own effort. Feng tastes the juice and says it's delicious while continuing to be provoked by the annoying player. In the blink of an eye, he gets behind him and says he accepts the jerk's challenge. Using only one hand, he forces the player to crouch. Now he is intrigued as the jerk was so arrogant but turns out to be truly weak. Other players want to know how Feng is so strong that he can subdue a berserker. Some warn him that this could attract the guard's wrath. Feng knows his limits and refrains from using any offensive abilities. However, the jerk becomes increasingly enraged at what's happening. Using one of his abilities, he fills himself with fury and strength, shattering the ground around him. Wielding his sword, he delivers a direct attack against Feng, who deflects it without moving an inch. Despite using all of his strength, the jerk is repelled by his own attack. Feng asks if he is starving because that strength is pitiful. Completely humiliated, the jerk loses his temper and charges again. However, a guard appears, saying he will be arrested on the spot for attacking another player in a peaceful area. He will be detained for 12 hours as punishment. The jerk is dismayed as there's nothing he can do now. As he leaves humiliated, escorted by the guard, he declares that his vengeance will not go unpunished. The girl wants to reward Feng somehow, but she's a beginner and has no money. Feng looks at her with a very serious expression. This makes the girl uncomfortable and she says she only sells juice and would never sell her body. Handing her a silver coin, Feng states that he needs a cook and she would be perfect for the job. That's her salary in advance. Worried, she asks if all she will need to do is cook. Feng says she can either trust him or remain on the streets, facing harassment. With little choice, she decides to trust this stranger. Feng gives her even more money to buy ingredients and rent a kitchen. This will prevent her from being harassed. She wants to know why he is treating her so well since he doesn't even know her. Feng says he decided to hire her the moment he saw how hard she works. As he leaves, she promises to do her best. His plan is to let her practice cooking for a while. Later, he will train her in the arts of combat and healing. In truth, he can't hide his excitement at having hired a cleric goddess with just a few coins. Walking, he reaches the outskirts of the city. He acquired that journal after defeating the werewolf. Since it's written in Elvish, he needs a librarian to decipher it. He just didn't expect the library to be in the city's outskirts. Without realizing it, he is nearly ambushed. A woman says he's new to the area and asks if he'd like to have some fun. She promises that if he comes in, he'll have a wonderful night. Feng retorts, asking if this isn't just an ambush. His reply irritates her, and she orders her henchmen to attack. But all Feng needs is his thunderous flash. His attackers fall to the ground, completely defeated. Approaching him, the woman says the player is indeed very skilled. Now she wants to know where he's headed since she knows the outskirts better than anyone. Feng says he doesn't want to trouble her and only wishes to reach the library. Revealing her true identity, she says it's his lucky day because she's the librarian. Wearing new clothes, she asks if the player believes her, and Feng is genuinely intrigued by the sudden change. Noticing he needs help, she invites him to the library to discuss the matter. Crossing a portal, Feng now finds himself inside the city's library. The place is utterly dilapidated, hardly resembling a library. The librarian asks the purpose of his visit. Revealing the journal, he says he needs its language translated. She immediately tells him it will cost 30 silver coins. Paying without hesitation, Feng realizes she only cares about money. As soon as she opens the journal, she is struck by something absurd. She instantly throws it away as the journal is engulfed by dark energy. Shadows begin to pour out of the journal's pages, revealing a creature of unknown level, the ghost of the great demon. The creature demands to know how she dares attempt to seal him. She replies that he's just a ghost. She hurls a divine spear of attack at him. The ghost accuses her of arrogance as the attack wasn't very effective. Even so, she protects herself with a golden magic circle. The ghost finally realized that the woman was stronger than she appeared. Casting an even more powerful spell, she began to burn the creature with divine light. The demon said it would find Feng again. The player was terrified. The system notified him that he had been cursed, his attributes halved, and in 90 days the demon would return. The librarian remarked that charging 30 silver coins for that service was a mistake, while Feng hadn't expected such a trap. She said that if he had kept the notebook for a few more days, his body would have been overtaken. Feng said he was still in trouble because he would die in 90 days. The librarian told him he needed to find the Book of Darkness and destroy it. This was an epic-level quest with unknown rewards. Feng asked where the shadowy cave was so he could find the book. She said the information would cost 10 gold coins but agreed to help him first and be paid later. She also said she would charge 3 gold coins to break the curse, which was the exact amount he had in his inventory. First, he needed to use the orb to go to the forest and collect 30 moonstones to initiate the ritual. The forest was for level 9 players. With his attributes halved, Feng needed to prepare adequately. With those potions and scrolls, he believed he had enough to succeed. Finally, in the forest, it was time for him to start gathering materials. Since it was a level 9 forest, the monsters, there were sources of interesting items. Additionally, there were several rare resources like ores and medicinal plants in the forest. For low-level players, dying there was common. The place was also known as the Land of Death. Under the effect of the curse, facing any creature there would be extremely difficult. Feng used an isolation scroll, significantly reducing his presence on the map, staying stealthy for 30 minutes. He sneaked past several creatures without being noticed. He continued deeper into the forest, searching for his items. Eventually, he found the stones he needed and began collecting them. Below him, he saw a caravan of monsters. The camp of those creatures must be nearby, and there should be treasure chests there. The first chest always has the best rewards. Surely no player had entered that forest yet. Seeing this opportunity, Feng decided to be the first to open the chest. It didn't take long for him to locate the monster camp. He quickly identified the storage area. Based on his experience, that's where the chests would be kept. He knew stealth wouldn't work against the creature guarding the storage area. If he initiated combat, he'd be discovered. He noticed the creature move toward the campfire and began eating. This might help him. He patiently observed the monster moving away. Still in stealth mode, he approached the cauldron. He noticed the smell of the food was foul. He then added a special spice to aid him in his endeavor to open the chest. All the creatures that ate it collapsed to the ground, completely intoxicated. Now he had a clear path to the storage area. Inside the tent, he confirmed his suspicions. There were various treasures there. He began collecting coins, ores, and items. Now he had a silver moon helmet. With a complete armor set, he would gain bonus attributes. Before the main chest, he prayed to find the rest of the armor inside. But what he got was the Ring of Insignificance, which made him completely invisible for 1 minute. Compared to the ring he already had, this was an amazing item. Outside, the monsters began to wake up. Feng had no idea why the creature had awakened so quickly. Realizing he was about to be attacked, he had to use a polymorph scroll, though it wasn't his preference as he had intended to save it for a powerful boss. It gave him just enough time to escape. The scroll's effect lasted only 1 second. The creature's enraged roar echoed through the dense forest. Feng was confident that with the help of the ring, he could collect all the treasure chests in the forest. Feng immediately began his risky endeavor. At the first chest, he was discovered by a monster and had to flee quickly, but he used another polymorph scroll on it. Though challenging, he managed to gather the materials needed for the ritual, all the chests, and the complete silver moon armor set. He returned to the librarian thinking that future quests would be easier with these items. Surprised by how quickly he completed the mission, she asked if he had collected all the moonstones. With all the necessary items in hand, he asked if the librarian could now remove the curse. She was impressed by what he had accomplished. Besides breaking curses, she mentioned the lunar drippage, an ancient ritual. For a small additional fee of 3 gold coins, she offered to perform the ritual on him, granting various additional benefits. Feeling like he was being extorted, Feng said he would stick with the cheaper rite. Insisting on her offer, she asked if the boy had ever heard of the Sword Saint. The legend tells that he was cursed by the Great Demon King and tormented for a long time. She paused the explanation to kick the phonograph, which wasn't working. The warrior discovered a way to break the curse through lunar drippage, gaining enough strength to subdue the Demon King. She claimed she was already giving him a discount and that it would be wise for him to accept her proposal. Feng reluctantly agreed. Outside, she instructed him to remain still so the ritual could begin. Feng asked if there were any risks. The woman replied that even though she had never performed the ritual before, she was very skilled and always praised by her superiors. She prepared to start the ritual but realized she had forgotten the first phrase. Feng began to worry, but the librarian told him to shut up since there were no refunds. After consulting a book, she started chanting the incantation. A magic circle appeared beneath his feet, along with orbs of energy. The curse began to lift from his body. The shadow emerging from his mouth started to coalesce. Once again, it formed the ghost that had attacked him before. Angry, the demon declared that this wasn't enough to loosen his control over Feng's body. The librarian explained that it was an illusionary clone created by the Demon King. Once defeated, the curse would be lifted. The demon declared he would never be defeated by a human. The clash of swords was violent. Despite being a specter, he was as powerful as Feng. The librarian stated that the specter had its full attributes intact. If Feng faced it directly, he would die. He was brutally thrown by the specter's sword. Feng gathered his strength to resist the blow. The situation was proving far too difficult as this demon was much stronger than him. All he could do now was defend. The demon tried to persuade the boy to surrender his body, promising strength and power. Refusing the offer, the battle raged on. Feng needed to remain completely focused, as any mistake would be fatal. The specter's attacks were incredibly powerful. Even when blocked, they pushed him back a great distance. Giving up on convincing him, the demon launched a fatal attack, executing the thunderous flash against Feng. The impact caused a massive explosion. Amid the smoke stood the demon, waiting to admire his fallen enemy. Feng survived the attack, but his health was nearly drained. The demon advanced to deliver the final blow, but his blade stopped mere centimeters from Feng's face. He couldn't move now, trapped inside a magic circle. The trick enraged the demon even further. Smiling, Feng said the creature hadn't seen that coming. While still in the forest, he had found a scroll for a magic circle. He hadn't expected to find such a high-caliber treasure in a low-level forest. That magic was highly effective against demons. During the fight, he handed the scroll to his clone. The clone skillfully executed their plan. To do so, they needed to activate all the outer points of the circle. Even so, the process took time. He barely succeeded. It was a shame to lose such a valuable item to defeat a mere specter. Determined to end the battle immediately, Feng sliced the demon into 2 pieces, then into several more. Even as it disappeared in defeat, the creature vowed they would meet again. With the demon finally defeated, the system notified the player of the various rewards he had received. He obtained the demon mask, which allows him to change his identity as a disguise. His investment paid off, as he could now hide his identity as a blacksmith. The cleric declared that the ritual was complete. He would no longer be tormented by the great demon's curse. Weakened by the ritual, she said she would need time to recover her strength. If he needed her again, she directed him to find her in White River City. Meanwhile, Feng thought he needed to level up a bit more since his meeting with Jimble Snow was approaching. In the city, players were discussing the rise in exchange rates between guilds. The currency exchange wasn't favorable for those who weren't wealthy. One young man in particular was boasting about selling all his items and earning enough money to sustain himself for 2 months in the real world. The protagonist is happy. Now he has reached a high enough level to equip the full Silver Moon set. He was caught off guard by the jerk who bullies other players. This time, the jerk brought along an even bigger bully, and together they want to settle the score. The bigger one is the Iron Sword Lion, a famous player from another game who has since migrated to God's domain. Very experienced, it didn't take long for him to establish his own guild, the Martial Union. He's a formidable player. In his past life, he easily defeated Flaming Tiger twice. However, with his current gear, beating him would be as easy as breathing. With this in mind, Feng ignored the group and continued on his way as if nothing had happened, which only made them angrier. The bully jerk demanded that he stop, saying they would settle their disputes immediately. Feng feigned ignorance, pretending not to recognize who these people were. He soon remembered the jerk's face, calling him the pervert who had harassed Violet Cloud. He was surprised the guy was already out of jail. Hearing this version of events, the guild leader instructed his subordinate to watch his behavior to avoid tarnishing the guild's reputation. Even so, he demanded 20 silver coins from Feng as compensation for beating up one of his subordinates. Not far away, other players watched the unfolding drama. They definitely assumed Feng was in trouble since the Iron Sword Lion was already level 5. Their leader told them not to intervene, only to step in if necessary. That would make their actions even more valuable. In truth, he was dying to see what Feng would do. Feng said 20 silver coins were almost nothing, pulling out a small pouch with 50 silver coins. The bigger jerk revealed himself to be quite greedy. He was more attached to money than expected and even proposed staying in touch. Correcting his subordinate's attitude, he assured him he would protect him in the future if he faced trouble. Anyone who dared provoke Feng would also provoke them. Very enthusiastically, he proposed a trade. What he didn't expect were black chains suddenly emerging from the ground. Furious at the situation, he demanded to know why Feng was treating him that way. It didn't take long for Feng to cough up a flurry of sword strikes. He did this in a safe zone, which could cause trouble with the guards. Looking at the rest of the jerks, he asked who else wanted the 50 silver coins. The jerk declared that Feng would pay for his actions since he had killed a player in a safe zone. The guards arrived quickly. Even uninvolved players were curious to see what happened to Feng. The jerk ran toward one of the guards, behaving like a victim. Humbling himself like a child, he begged the guard to imprison the player who had just committed an atrocious act. He was confident that this time Feng wouldn't get away. Finally, he would get what he deserved. The guard recognized Feng's noble title as the Demon Hunter Lord. For killing a player, you would have to pay 4 silver coins or face imprisonment. In the game, nobles and demon hunters enjoy various special privileges. A civilian player who provokes a noble can be imprisoned or even executed, while guards ignore questionable actions by nobles. Feng handed the guard a total of 20 silver coins, an advance payment since he planned to kill 4 more players. This casually made statement filled the jerks with fear and dread. They tried to flee, certain they would be mercilessly killed. In a war zone, players are advised to eliminate weaker enemies first. With this in mind, the monsters that posed the least danger began to be exterminated. A tank was holding off the attacks while staying alert enough to warn his companion of imminent danger. The girl glanced back, seeing the monster's attack already in motion. This immediately put her in a state of panic, as there wasn't much she could do to avoid it. A voice nearby shouted for her to duck immediately. She obeyed, safe from certain death. Gentle Snow advised the player that if she wasn't vigorous enough to continue fighting, she should retreat and rest. After offering the advice, the girl charged forward against the remaining creatures. Determined, she weaved through them, slicing them as if they were pieces of sushi. Gentle Snow was highly experienced and skilled, easily subduing those second-rate monsters. Her attacks demonstrated a glimpse of her power, causing the creatures to begin fearing for their lives. However, Gentle Snow didn't care about them and continued her benevolent genocide. With an onslaught of consecutive strikes, he was able to annihilate all creatures within the radius of his attack. On the battlefield, players warned of the boss's imminent attack, which seemed to be a special ability. The boss unleashed 2 powerful energy beams, devastating the battlefield. Gentle Snow reminded her companions that after this, the boss would enter a vulnerable state, the perfect opportunity for the damage dealers to fulfill their mission. Immediately, the mages prepared to cast the most powerful spells they knew. The smallest explosion took over the scene, with the coordinated attack proving highly effective. Gathered with her subordinates, Gentle Snow asked how much they had lost in the encounter. In total, 5 players had perished. Gentle Snow ordered her instructions to be relayed to the others, calling for a brief 10-minute break before they advanced to the canyon. While discussing strategy, a portal appeared among them. It quickly captured everyone's attention as they assumed the battle wasn't over yet. The mysterious figure emerged from the portal. The young man wore a hood that concealed his identity. Revealing his face, he politely asked for permission to introduce himself. His name was Black Flame. Feng had built a solid reputation in the city, which allowed him to acquire that special teleportation. Immediately, the players recognized him. This was the mysterious blacksmith whose fame continued to rise within the game. Black Flame quickly acknowledged the leader of Ouroboros, saying it was a pleasure to finally meet her. Knowing they were recruiting new players, he approached them to initiate cooperation. Without a chief blacksmith, she said they were willing to pay him whatever he wanted. One of her subordinates cautioned that he might be an imposter, as they had encountered deceivers before. Indeed, there were several scammers trying to steal the identity of the real Black Flame. In one such incident, they lost their entire stock in just 30 minutes. None of those claiming to be blacksmiths managed to craft anything useful. Gentle Snow reassured her subordinate. The mysterious appearance of this man made her certain he was either the real deal or, at the very least, a skilled professional. Black Flame clarified that he intended to work with them on equal terms and did not plan to join the guild. The haughty blonde found the young man far too arrogant. Gentle Snow was curious to know what made him so confident. Without saying a word, he showed them various forging blueprints he possessed, leaving them immediately impressed. Confidently, Black Flame asked if he was now qualified enough for them to start negotiations. The blonde subordinate grew curious, wanting to know how he had acquired so many advanced blueprints in such a short time. Black Flame refused to answer, stating it was a merchant's secret. 2 hours earlier, Feng had been finishing his preparations at the Dwarves' Tavern. He needed to deliver 5 chilled drinks to Blackbeard to obtain all his treasures. Feng already had the necessary items to complete the quest. These were the chilled juices prepared by Violet Cloud. Blackbeard was overjoyed with the taste of the juice, increasing his favorability toward Feng. As he finished the drinks, Blackbeard grew saddened, imagining he might never taste something so delicious again. Feng assured him not to worry, as he had an endless supply of those juices in his inventory. This gesture earned him Blackbeard's reverence, along with 10 advanced forging blueprints. Gentle Snow was certain of one thing: she couldn't allow this person to work with any other guild. She immediately agreed to Black Flame's terms, to the complete surprise of her subordinates. Turning away from her, he declared he was no longer interested in the deal. Gentle Snow tried to make amends, apologizing. She assured him it wasn't her intention to be rude and asked him to reconsider. The haughty blonde couldn't accept that her leader had humbled herself before a mere blacksmith. However, Gentle Snow was convinced he was the real Black Flame. His assistance was crucial for Ouroboros to become the greatest guild in the game. Black Flame stopped walking away. Looking back, he praised Gentle Snow's prudence. His cooperation would come at the right price. Gentle Snow hoped their partnership would be as solid as a rock. Curiously, she found his handshake felt far too familiar. She informed him they were heading to the canyon and asked if he was interested in joining them. Black Flame agreed, as he also had a mission to complete there, recovering the Titan's heart. This greatly excited Gentle Snow. Now she would have the chance to see if he was truly as capable as he claimed. One of the girls remarked that blacksmiths were supposed to be weak in combat. Having him along might not be much of an advantage. While another girl seemed slightly optimistic, eager to see the blacksmith's humiliation unfold. The skies of the canyon were filled with level 6 harpies. Gentle Snow warned her companions to stay vigilant at all times. One of the players mentioned having read on a game forum about the harpies. They snatched players into the sky, dropping them in free fall, a fatal descent on its own. Black Flame commented that anyone caught must have terrible movement skills. A girl, irritated by his remarks, said the blacksmith was far too arrogant. But while complaining, she was grabbed by the harpy's claws on her shoulders. As she was being taken, she began desperately crying for help. Black Flame said she was foolish, pointing out that these creatures target the loudest players. The team's tank tried to save the girl, but he wasn't fast enough to catch her. As he apologized for failing, she continued to plead for assistance. The mean blonde launched her powerful flames at the harpy. Hitting the creature caused it to drop its captive. Now the girl was plummeting toward the ground in free fall, trembling for her life. She landed completely unprotected on the ground. Despite suffering significant damage, the fall wasn't fatal. The mean blonde pointed out how pathetic her companion's actions had been. Disappointed, the girl blamed the blacksmith, claiming he had distracted her. Black Flame thought to himself that she was an expert at blaming others. Another harpy furiously charged toward them. It headed straight for Black Flame, who seemed to already know what was coming. Before the creature could touch his shoulders, it was promptly executed. The girl who had nearly died to a harpy was stunned by this swift action. She had to dodge the falling corpse of the monster. Black Flame said it was too easy, as simple as squashing ants. Even so, the girl insisted on embarrassing herself, claiming he had just gotten lucky. Revealing herself to be even more foolish than expected, her shouting once again made her a target for the monsters. Trying to salvage what was left of her reputation, she managed to dodge the creature's attack. It was promptly executed by one of her companions. Coins fell to the ground as a reward while she stared astonished at the figure of her savior. Despite everything, Black Flame didn't hesitate to save a companion. He proved so effective with his sword that the other players were visibly impressed. Gentle Snow was now thoughtful, as she only knew one person with such mastery, and that person wasn't a blacksmith as far as she knew. Black Flame instructed them not to get distracted. They needed to collect their rewards and move on immediately. That relentless display of strength and violence caused the remaining creatures to flee in fear, something the mean blonde immediately noticed. She began feeling uneasy, thinking it impossible to know another beast like Fang in the same lifetime. Finally, they arrived at the location where a meteorite was supposedly said to have fallen. The crater was filled with mechanical puppets, all between levels 9 and 10. Gentle Snow questioned what kind of challenging mission this was. Black Flame replied that he needed to retrieve the Titan's heart. The leader warned that for their current group, facing those monsters would mean initiating an unwinnable battle. Their only chance was to fight the creatures one by one. They began strategizing how to execute such a plan. The mean blonde's role was to lure the creatures using magic. Black Flame interrupted, asking them to calm down. The mean blonde took it as an insult, thinking he doubted her strength. She explained that mechanical monsters were incredibly fast and that it would take someone with agility over 14 points to outrun them. In the group, only 2 people had enough agility to act as bait. Black Flame instructed the 2 to lure the creatures to a specific location. Once they were gathered, the rest would be his responsibility. Gentle Snow agreed to the plan but refused to take the speed blessing scroll from him. She believed those creatures could never catch her. Although she was indeed fast, dodging the strikes was proving to be quite challenging. The automatons were indeed incredibly swift. Successfully, the 2 led the creatures into the trap. The mean blonde was frightened, trying to imagine how Black Flame planned to execute all the creatures. The young man summoned a scroll into one of his hands. He placed it on the ground as if preparing an enchantment. The girl immediately recognized the magnitude of the magical power. Black Flame continued the ritual as his sword began to change color. With his sword coated in energy, he awaited the approach of the dangerous creatures. Raising his blade high, he began chanting an incantation, a second-layer spell. It was the Flame Blade Dance, summoning several fireballs in the sky. Immediately, the fireballs started descending toward the horde of creatures. The creatures were devastated as if they were far weaker than they actually were. The monsters were caught off guard, never imagining they were walking into such a devastating attack. Even the players had to brace themselves against the ground to avoid being swept away by the strong gusts of wind. Gentle Snow was deeply intrigued by this passive display of strength and power. Now the battlefield was filled with items waiting to be collected. Fang noticed that after this feat, he had leveled up to 6. Meanwhile, his companions reached level 7. Since all the equipment was much weaker than what he could craft, he decided not to pick anything up. Gentle Snow didn't know how to repay his kindness, but Black Flame said escorting him, there was already enough. With that, Gentle Snow declared that her group could only go this far. If Black Flame intended to proceed, he would have to go alone. Still very grateful, he offered her a return scroll so they could head back to the city center. In a much friendlier tone, the haughty blonde invited the blacksmith to join their group for a dungeon run the next day. Turning away, he said he was too busy, and they could talk about it another time, a response fitting for someone of his fame. As he walked away, he noticed the haughty blonde had sent him a friend request. He declined it without a second thought, leaving the girl utterly furious. Finally, he found himself before a massive iron gate. To access the area, he needed to use the key given by Blackbeard. Once inserted into the lock, the magic began to activate. The gates, once firmly shut, started to open slowly. This caught the attention of nearby creatures. Noticing the gate opening and the lone player, it moved into attack. Black Flame decided not to waste time pulling the key from the lock. He stepped through the gates immediately. The system notified the player of his discovery. This was the Steel Fortress of Barusia. A new quest appeared. Now he needed to find the steel heart within the fortress. Exploring the area, he came across a grand hall. Inside was a massive cauldron, releasing smoke from within. Knowing what he needed to do, he descended to the ground. He used his gravity ring to soften his fall. Finding an opening in the wall, he spotted a small chest inside. This was exactly what he had been searching for. Slowly, he approached the valuable item. As he tried to open the chest, a massive explosion occurred. It would have been strong enough to drain all of his health points. That's what would have happened if he hadn't used one of his clones. Relieved, he was grateful for being meticulous. Otherwise, he would have fallen for the trap. Inside the chest was the black stone shield, boasting formidable stats. Among level 10 items, the shield was one of the best, so he decided to take it. The chest also contained the Mastery Die, an item highly coveted in his past life. When rolled, its result adds to a random attribute. Since he didn't need money, he rolled the die onto the ground, saying he wouldn't use it. Accidentally activating it, he achieved the highest score. Because of this, his reward was doubled, increasing his sword proficiency by 40 points. He also grabbed the other scrolls, as they might save his life in the future. While analyzing the items, the noises within the fortress put him on alert. Feng knew he couldn't stay in the fortress much longer. He began his exit process, diving into a lake below. Swimming toward the bottom, he searched for a passage. Surfacing for air, he arrived at the main area of the fortress. The system notified him that the testing period for the virtual reality headset was nearing its end. After all of his effort to reach this point, his trial period was almost over. Knowing he had amassed a considerable fortune, he decided to log out of the game for now. Elsewhere in the real world, someone was pestering Blackie, saying he should have joined Shadow. The boy replied that he was in another guild, but the other player pointed out there was no guild nearby. Blackie didn't know how to respond either, as Feng hadn't named their team yet. Persisting, the player assumed Blackie must have failed his test and offered to help him with it. Noticing that the boy was still using trial equipment, it was clear that the guild he belonged to wasn't doing well. If he joined Shadow, he would have received a permanent high-performance helmet worth 20,000 credits. Feng even felt sorry for Blackie, thinking the boy must have been deceived. Feng finally arrived at the scene, introducing himself as the workshop leader and asking if there was any problem. Upon realizing this was the leader, the young man began to act hostile. He said if Feng couldn't afford a decent helmet, he shouldn't think about opening his own workshop. The jerk aggressively pointed his finger at Feng's face, and Feng reacted in kind. This caused the young man to writhe in pain, realizing his pinky was broken. Looking at his friend, Feng mentioned that their supplies had just arrived. It was the best gaming equipment currently available. Additionally, the dormitory network would be upgraded to ensure minimal latency. Blackie hadn't expected such luxuries. The jerk with the broken pinky started mocking them, saying they were putting on a show. He claimed that no matter how absurdly wealthy Feng was, if he became an enemy of Shadow, he would be annihilated. Emboldened, Blackie declared that they were friends with Gentle Snow, and the jerk could test his luck anytime. Learning they had Ouroboros as support made the jerk slightly uneasy. Even so, he continued provoking them, assuming Feng hadn't been accepted into Ouroboros. Otherwise, he wouldn't need to set up his own workshop. Still furious, the jerk demanded to know the name of this unknown workshop. Feng replied that it was called Zero Wing and even invited the jerk to join them. Returning to his superior, the jerk reported that he had almost succeeded in his mission. But the second in command dismissed this as an unacceptable outcome. Unfortunately, Blackie was the only one who hadn't accepted their invitation, as he could join another workshop. The leader of that workshop was a fourth-year student, an arrogant individual who behaved obnoxiously. Growing more curious about this new workshop, the superior asked how many members it had, discovering there were only 6. This made him laugh uncontrollably, concluding they weren't to be taken seriously. He advised the jerk not to waste time on minor matters and to focus on recruiting within the school. Their current goal was to become the first to complete a 20-player dungeon, reinforcing the idea that this tiny guild wouldn't be a threat to them. In his past life, Feng had been so obsessed with gaming that he often neglected his studies. His parents had fallen ill from mental exhaustion, leaving the family burdened with enormous debts. Feng wouldn't allow that to happen again. He transferred some money to them, explaining that he had a part-time job and urging them to take better care of their health. Now he had to address his academic problems. His classmates were surprised to see him, as he was notorious for frequently skipping class. Some were annoyed by his presence, assuming a monitor had summoned him. Other girls felt disgusted just being near the worst student in the class. This was something Feng already knew from his past life. No one in that class liked him. Even so, one girl approached Feng to talk. She was the only exception among them all. Although everyone else hated him, she was the one person who held nothing against him. The girl was concerned about the class meeting. Seeing them talking, a guy decided to butt in. He wanted to know why Feng had decided to show up that day. This was Feilong. In Feng's past life, Feilong had married into a wealthy family. Eventually, he climbed the corporate ladder and became influential. Investing heavily in the game, he even betrayed Shadow. That class meeting had been a pivotal moment in Feng's past life, as his classmates, led by Feilong, had sabotaged him. The general perception was that Feng wasn't interested in competing, only in graduating without having to continue attending classes. The students were about to vote on whether to allow this. Long mocked Feng, calling him useless and saying college was irrelevant for someone like him. Things were unfolding just like in Feng's past life, but this time he was prepared for the meeting. The girl tried to intervene, but Long dismissed her, saying her opinion didn't matter. Feng provoked Long, stating that he disagreed with the class's decision, which triggered an aggressive reaction from the guy. To everyone's surprise, the athlete was subdued by the student who rarely attended class. The expression of terror overtook his classmates. With a gaze full of determination, he ordered that trash to get out of his way. With just one strike, the jerk was now sprawled on the ground, unconscious. Feng appeared surprised by how weak the guy was. At the classroom door, 2 people had witnessed what had happened. Surprisingly, one of them was Yuhu, a declared rival of Feng. The girl hadn't expected him to return to school. Yuhu wanted to know if they already knew each other. Feng hadn't anticipated running into his ex-girlfriend alongside her current boyfriend so soon. He was already upset about losing his position as leader, and now he had this mediocre guy to keep bothering him. Irritated, Yuko decided to confront him, as it had been a while since his last embarrassment. Forgetting his subordinates, Yu declared he would teach Feng a lesson in the real world. As he approached, he had the strange feeling he knew Feng from somewhere but couldn't pinpoint where. The girl protecting Feng ordered Yuhu to leave the room as he didn't belong to that class. Being completely arrogant and disrespectful, Yuhu claimed the girl must be interested in him. Feng stopped him from touching her, saying that fighting without reason was boring. They should make a bet to make things interesting. Yuhu wanted to bet 1,000 credit points and demanded Feng lick his boots if he lost. Feng responded that they should bet 10,000 points. His ex-girlfriend couldn't believe he had that much money to wager. Showing his bank account balance, Feng said that amount was insignificant to him. Yuhu was now excited, thinking beating this weakling would be easier than expected. The two entered an arena. The students watching the fight assumed Feng would be completely crushed. His ex-girlfriend thought he was even more foolish than she had believed. Yuhu noticed the lost look on his opponent's face, assuming Feng must already regret his decision. But with years of experience and high-level combat from his past life, Feng was practically a martial artist. The only issue was that while skilled, he lacked raw power and could tire quickly. His strategy was to focus his attacks on the body's weak points, areas that couldn't be strengthened. Even without great physical strength, he had countless ways to win this fight. Provoked by Feng's smile, Yuhu launched his attack. Nearly consumed by rage, he was just about to lay his hands on Feng. Patiently, Feng waited for the right moment to make his move. He landed a precise strike directly to his opponent's throat. The blow compressed Yuhu's larynx, preventing him from breathing naturally. The jerk clutched his neck, struggling to catch his breath after the hit. He couldn't understand how this was happening. Before he could react, Feng delivered a violent left cross to his temple. The strike immediately disoriented Yuhu and left him off balance. When executed correctly with enough force, such a move could incapacitate someone instantly. The other students wondered how a boy who barely attended classes had suddenly become so strong. The secret lay in muscle nutrition potions, something Feng could never afford in his past life, but had now resolved as one of his major limitations. After leaving the building, Jia Ruoxi caught up with him. She wanted to confirm if he was indeed the Feng she used to know. Feeling awkward, she shared that in 10 days there would be an event with important attendees. She suggested it would be a good opportunity for him to be there. Feng accepted the invitation and confirmed he would attend. Back in his room, he realized he now had opportunities to be included in other spheres of life. To prepare for this chance, he needed to earn more money. The game recognized the quality of his upgraded equipment. Now he could execute even more precise actions. Feng finally returned to the game. He still needed to find the Titan's heart to complete his current mission. He immediately noticed that with his better equipment, the loading speed was almost instantaneous. Finally, he stumbled upon something related to the mission. Before him was the heart of the Steel Fortress, also known as the Titan's Heart. A mysterious being hovered in the air. It hadn't expected visitors after so long. To celebrate this important occasion, it decided to use Feng's flesh and bones as snacks for its beloved pet. It summoned the creature from the shadows. It was a 3-headed hellhound, an elite level 15 monster. Feng didn't remember this creature. Perhaps his actions were altering the game. Regardless, he decided he would kill it. The creature unleashed a powerful incandescent breath at him. Flames engulfed the area as the creature waited to observe the result of its attack. Feng used the gravity ring to dodge the attack and intended to surprise the creature from above. But he was caught off guard by the creature's second attack, having used the gravity ring too early. He was hit directly by the ice breath. This consumed 30% of his health points, and the freezing effect limited his movements. Before he could assess the situation fully, he was already the target of the third attack. The mysterious clown smiled, imagining that the player had been defeated. But he was delighted to see Feng still alive, a remarkably persistent pest. Feng hadn't anticipated that the heads would cooperate and possess distinct magical attributes. If he hadn't conjured defensive blades, he would surely have died. The clown knew this and announced he would help Feng get rid of the blades by using a high-grade dispersal effect. Now the defensive blades were inaccessible for this battle. The Dark Clown wasn't particularly strong in combat, but possessed abilities designed to cause headaches. Feng knew that his current objective wasn't to fight. What he truly needed to do was retrieve the Titan's heart. Before he could reach the artifact, the Hellhound repelled him with an attack. The creature was not only incredibly strong, but also impressively agile, nearly taking 60% of his health. Before Feng could finish his thoughts, he noticed fireballs coming his way. Reacting quickly, he managed to avoid being hit. The clown observed the battle with enthusiasm as the hellhound continued its relentless assault. Feng's feet were now frozen for 3 seconds, rendering him immobile. He needed to think carefully, as a direct hit would mean his defeat. He remembered the scrolls he had obtained from the chest, which provided resistance to magical attributes. With limited time, he couldn't afford to carefully choose which scroll to activate. The clown noticed Feng's strategy, fully aware that if Feng chose the wrong one, the battle would be over. A massive explosion of fire occurred, but Feng remained unharmed. His luck had saved him this time. Soon, the clown would discover if that had been sheer luck or not. A physical attack was now headed his way. Feng realized he could use the Gravity Ring's ability again. He activated it to dodge the attack, heading straight toward the clown, who was now genuinely terrified. Feng continued closing in on him, determined to take the clown down. Now in control of the offensive, Feng was resolved to make the clown pay for his actions. A large explosion followed, and this time the mysterious clown was hit. Feng identified the Hellhound's attack pattern: elemental attacks followed by a physical strike. With this knowledge, defending himself became much easier. With the clown defeated, Feng noticed something unexpected. Without someone to give it orders, the Hellhound seemed uninterested in continuing the fight. Seeing that the creature was no longer hostile, Feng safely approached the Titan's heart. Close enough to the artifact, he extended his hand toward it, triggering a reaction. The Titan's heart shrank in size, fitting into his hands, granting him ample rewards, including items and experience points. Due to level restrictions, Feng decided to use the items as raw materials to enhance the power of the Abyssal Blade. Now his primary weapon had become significantly more powerful. Handling the blade, he admired how truly remarkable it was. The negotiation with Gentle Snow had been a success, and now he could even involve his allies in these adventures. As he approached them, they immediately recognized him. He had chosen Blackie and the Shield Warrior for their strategic value. Both were thrilled about Feng's investment in them. This marked the first formal battle for their guild, and Feng hoped his companions were prepared. More items were arriving via the delivery system. The location appeared to be a completely desolate graveyard. The Martial Union was already present in the dungeon, aiming for 5th place. In 4th place were the members of the Celestial Crown. In 3rd stood the Assassin's Alliance. In 2nd were the despicable players from Shadow. And in 1st place, to no one's surprise, was Ouroboros. The bystanders were amazed by the gathering of all the leaders, noting their impressive equipment. The expedition had yet to begin, as they were waiting for one last person. The mean blonde wondered if he had arrived, while the mage assumed that he wouldn't show up, claiming he was likely too afraid of being humiliated. As soon as he finished speaking, the teleportation signal began to manifest. The bystanders were impressed to discover who had just arrived. It was Feng, accompanied by his friends. The three approached the leaders who were already waiting. One of them wanted to confirm if this was the same person who had defeated members of Shadow, all while observing the leader of the small guild. Still very irritated, the leader wanted revenge immediately, but his superior urged patience. Their priority now was to complete the Black Moon Cemetery before their competitors. Secretly, the leader harbored a strong desire to personally deal with this defiant player. In his past life, he had been part of Shadow's main force, but now he stood as a direct competitor. Gentle Snow stated that her guild would lead the expedition, with the system distributing rewards based on the player's needs. Feng firmly pointed out that this was different from what they had discussed, as he was supposed to have priority regarding the blueprints. The mage retorted that the situation had changed. Since their equipment had been upgraded, the blacksmith wasn't as indispensable as he thought. In fact, she said he should be more grateful. Gentle Snow apologized, explaining that she also needed to prioritize her team's interests. Not entirely pleased with what had transpired, Feng decided to let luck guide this expedition. However, he was fully aware that her goal was to make him concede even more in negotiations. This was undoubtedly a difficult woman to deal with. Under the crimson moonlight, the players were ready to begin the mission. After a long walk, one of them began to feel uneasy, as the road seemed endless. Feng reassured him, saying they were almost at the exit. The mage remained impertinent, claiming no one could match Gentle Snow's leadership skills. And indeed, her planning and coordination were impeccable. Thanks to her orders, the players successfully avoided powerful monsters. So far, there had been no injuries or deaths during the expedition. Feng started to find the dungeon's ease suspicious. Desperate screams echoed, drawing the players' attention. Gentle Snow immediately recognized it as her scouting team and demanded to know what was happening. Unfortunately, the players died so quickly that they couldn't report what had occurred. Upon realizing this, she ordered the warriors and healers to stay on guard as combat was imminent. Looking back, Feng declared that something was approaching. Through the cemetery's mist, a terrifying silhouette could be seen. The players had no idea what this monstrosity could be. Feng commanded those with defensive abilities to activate them immediately. The shield warrior followed the order, using the protective blessing. He urged the warrior beside him to do the same without delay. From within the mist, an attack of black stakes suddenly emerged. One of them struck a player's head fatally. The shield warrior could only watch as his companion's body disintegrated. Gentle Snow began to worry as her team members continued to fall. The creature was the cemetery's guardian, a special elite monster that regenerated health while hidden in the mist. She then ordered everyone to begin retreating, as remaining in the mist was too dangerous. Feng told them not to withdraw yet, instructing them to cover the healers and the rest of the team. The shield warrior obeyed promptly as the powerful creature prepared another attack. The haughty blonde was astonished at the shield warrior's foolishness for choosing to listen to Feng over Gentle Snow. Facing the impending fight, Gentle Snow ordered the healers to restore the warrior's energy. The creature's energy orb was complete, and when it was launched onto the battlefield, it caused a massive explosion. Through the rising smoke, a faint shadow could be seen. The shield warrior had managed to block the attack and survive. Feng praised his teammates' effort, as it had created an opportunity for him to approach stealthily. With a single strike of his sword, he mercilessly severed one of the creature's hands. This prevented it from attempting another spell. Blackie was already prepared to unleash his sinister whip. Despite everything, the haughty blonde didn't wait for an order, attacking the creature immediately. She covered the monster's body with devastating explosions. Confidently, she believed that after such a powerful attack, there was no way the creature could still be alive. Feng energetically reminded everyone that the mist hadn't dissipated yet. They couldn't relax, as the fight wasn't over. Soon, they realized there was more than one creature in the mist. Zombies were approaching the players. Although not particularly strong, they revived even after being killed. Two of the creatures had dangerously approached a player, taking her down. The Ouroboros forces are being completely wiped out and need to leave the area. The penalty for dying is too harsh, but Gentle Snow doesn't wish for them to retreat from the first battle. Feng said there's no need to retreat, but to overcome this adversity, the command must be handed over to him. Eagle Blonde is very stubborn. Even knowing he's a formidable player, she said Gentle Snow shouldn't do it. Despite her objection, the girl ended up agreeing to pass the leadership to Feng. The mage was furious because she didn't want to obey this guy. He said that if they didn't want to die there, they had better start obeying him immediately. The zombies and cemetery guardians are blocking the path, but they aren't the creatures they need to defeat. He told Evil Blonde to use a fire spell in an empty space. That would dispel the fog, creating a safe passage for them. Following that, he warned everyone to be ready to move through. Gentle Snow began to suspect he might be a beta tester for the game. Furious, Evil Blonde said that in the end, he was still dependent on her abilities. She demonstrated her most powerful technique, Flame Tempest. The whirlwind of fire incinerated some creatures while clearing a path. Amidst the flames, Feng moved forward, urging everyone to follow him. His companions immediately moved in his direction. The members of Ouroboros did the same. Some players noticed that the creatures were still following them. Feng ordered them not to get distracted by looking back. Since the dungeon's opening, 3 hours had passed and there was still no sign of its completion. The leader of the assassins was teleported outside without his items. His team had failed to clear the first stage and, as a penalty, lost 3 levels. Inside, Blackie and the others continued fleeing from the ravenous zombies. In his desperation to escape, he tripped, panicking as he didn't want to die, until he finally realized they were no longer being chased. Feng explained that the monsters don't leave their zones and that they had already escaped the creature's battle area. Even so, something much worse was still waiting for them. He told Blackie to see for himself. In front of them stood a large, sinister portal with a massive skull at its top. Though they had reached the tomb, their expedition had lost several players. Feng assumed the girls were terrified. Gentle Snow stated that they shouldn't be underestimated. They had made it there thanks to the sacrifice of their comrades, and for them, they must conquer this challenge. Feng opened the gate leading to the cavern's interior. A small team of players entered to explore the area. At the center of the chamber was a mysterious creature. It was the Fallen Lord. Though at level 6, it had 120,000 health points, a truly impressive number. Only by defeating this creature could they complete the dungeon. The only way out of that place was by defeating the monster or dying in its hands. Knowing he had insider knowledge, Gentle Snow wanted to know if they had any chance of winning. Unfortunately, it seemed to be a completely new scenario. That lord wasn't supposed to appear at this stage. Either things had changed substantially or his team was making far more progress than expected. Evil Blonde assumed they were doomed since the player full of ideas had no suggestions. She mentioned they could try using a crossfire tactic. They had no idea what that was, while Feng stated that if executed well, the chance of victory was 20%. Statistics that left Evil Blonde disheartened, while Gentle Snow decided they should try it. First, the melee players attacked the boss. Drawing the creature's attention, they quickly retreated, allowing the ranged attackers to deal damage. As soon as they captured the boss's attention, the melee fighters would attack again, repeating the process until victory. In theory, it seems simple, but Gentle Snow made it clear it would be very hard to avoid the boss's attacks. Indeed, they would get hit and needed to be prepared to sacrifice themselves for the team. Evil Blonde said he couldn't treat his companions as mere cannon fodder. Countering her argument, the Shield Knight said he would do as instructed. As long as his leader gave the command, there was nothing he wouldn't do. Even Gentle Snow was willing to sacrifice herself for the team's sake. For now, their fate lay in Feng's strategy. Even though she is difficult to deal with, Gentle Snow is very responsible when it comes to her guild. It's no exaggeration to say that she is the pillar of her own team. Full of determination, they aim to win the battle or die trying. The boss grips his sword firmly. Fang warns that the creature is preparing to strike. Its slash perfectly slices through Gentle Snow's body. To the creature's complete surprise, it was only an image. Having already gained some distance, she announced it was time for the ranged attackers to start their assault. Blackie is focused, preparing his magic. Before he could do anything, a massive pillar of fire descended upon the creature. Underestimating Blackie's abilities, the wicked blonde remarked that they were in a battle, not there to tickle the creature. Even though it was a powerful attack, the fight is far from over. The creature charges at them, utterly enraged. But midway through, it was intercepted by Fang. He managed to land a clean strike on the monster's ankle. With that attack, the boss's speed was reduced by 50%. However, the creature began behaving strangely, as if preparing to do something different. It stomped the ground with immense power, shattering the floor. The intense shockwave caused the mages to lose their balance. This created an opening for the boss to attack his immobilized targets. Fang alerted them to the imminent danger. Determined to kill the players, the creature hurled its sword toward them. The weapon approached rapidly, and the wicked blonde was terrified, knowing she wouldn't be able to dodge. Fang quickly used the gravity control ring's ability, placing himself between the blonde and the sword. Using a defensive sword technique, he managed to protect them both. The blade was deflected, embedding itself into the ground. Fang's selfless act was completely unexpected by the wicked blonde. His companions were also worried, as it seemed that despite defending the attack, he had taken severe damage. Gradually, he tried to regain his composure while being watched. Gentle Snow hadn't expected the first person to fall would be the most well-prepared among them. Fang looked on as his body began to gradually fade. Before he could die, the healer took him into her hands. While chanting a powerful incantation, the warrior's life was being restored. This was entirely unexpected for him, as all she had done until now was criticize him. She had only recently learned that spell and knew Fang couldn't die there. Having been healed by her, Fang expressed his gratitude. But the moment was short-lived, as the boss had already recovered its sword and the battle was about to resume. The shield warrior was confident he could draw the creature's attention. However, he was utterly ignored. From behind the boss, Gentle Snow unleashed a brutal series of attacks. Even so, she was completely unable to draw the creature's attention, which was focused solely on Fang. Until Fang died, the boss wouldn't divert its attention from him. Since they had reduced its health by half, the creature changed its behavior. Immediately, he summoned all his clones to focus their attacks on the boss. Despite everything, this was a good opportunity for Fang to strike the creature with his full power. Distracted, the boss was struck by a fire spell. The mages were doing everything possible to provide support in the battle. The presence of the clones confused the creature, creating openings for it to be attacked. As long as the clones were skillfully controlled, Fang could disorient the boss. Soon, its irritation reached astronomical levels as it furiously missed its attacks amidst the battle. That was the signal they had reached the final stage of the confrontation. Fang and his companions were ready to continue their assault. In this final phase, the boss had grown stronger. Its reaction speed was much faster and its aggressiveness had increased. Moreover, if it killed any player, it would recover part of its health. None of them could fall, or else all their efforts would have been in vain. Fang instructed his friends not to attack simultaneously and to avoid drawing attention. Gentle Snow told her companions to retreat from the battlefield. The order to retreat spread among them. Near the boss, only Fang and Gentle Snow remained. The enraged creature continued delivering its powerful strikes, but Fang was already very familiar with that attack pattern. He managed to counterattack whenever openings appeared in the creature's defense. As he finished his attack, Gentle Snow appeared to follow up with an offensive. She managed to stealthily approach behind the boss, landing a precise strike to its neck, depleting more of its health. The creature dropped its sword as it tried to grab the player with one of its hands. Gentle Snow couldn't react quickly enough and was grabbed by the monster. It hurled her violently to the ground. Completely defenseless, there was little she could do to protect herself from the attack. Before the creature could strike her, Fang was already using another of his abilities. The gravity control was enough to pull the girl away from the creature's attack. The powerful impact on the ground threw her far away. Fang said he would deliver the final blow and that she should get as far away as possible. Though reluctant, there wasn't much she could argue. Moving forward, he prepared a fire enchantment in one of his hands. The monster declared that being challenged by mortals was equivalent to inviting their own destruction. Confident and determined, Fang unleashed another of his powerful attacks on the creature. His blade struck something. He felt the impact, but it wasn't the creature. Unexpectedly, between him and the monster, there was a barrier of energy. That unforeseen scenario left him vulnerable. Without the enchantment, all he could rely on now were his sword skills. Using his astonishing agility, he began delivering multiple slashing strikes against the creature. Finally, the boss had just over 800 health points left. The battle was nearing its end. The creature roared furiously again, releasing a shockwave. The force was enough to throw Fang away, while Gentle Snow advanced. The final blow would be delivered by someone from her guild. Fang screamed desperately for her not to do it. Even so, she pressed the attack, striking the monster mercilessly with her sword. Causing no damage, she was stunned to see her sword destroyed. This outcome was something she hadn't anticipated. Unable to defend herself, her life was in grave danger. The monster wielded its blade, ready to claim Gentle Snow's life. Feng did everything he could to reach her in time and prevent the worst from happening. He couldn't let her die under those circumstances. It might jeopardize their victory. Time seemed to slow down. He felt he wouldn't make it in time. Something unexpected began to happen. It was as if time had frozen. He sensed something unusual happening throughout his body. It felt like his cells were being overloaded. In the simulator, an intense electrical surge coursed through his body. At that crucial moment in the battle, the system notified him that his device was malfunctioning due to an energy overload. An unknown anomaly was occurring. His consciousness synchronization rate was far beyond the expected limit. The player's consciousness had exceeded the maximum threshold the game could support. In virtual reality, his character was brimming with energy. The desperation of the situation had triggered an overclock. Suddenly, time scarcity was no longer a hindrance to his task. The boss's blade was promptly parried by his sword. Unexpectedly, the impossible had happened. Feng managed to save his teammate. Even she didn't know how he had moved so fast. The boss, too, was surprised, unable to comprehend what had just occurred. The entire situation was beyond the monster's understanding, even if Feng tried to explain it. Close enough to the creature, he activated his abyssal bond, binding the monster with chains. Until the armor collapsed lifelessly to the ground, there was no more life inside it. His companions were deeply intrigued, having no idea how it had all happened. Feng remained still, contemplative about what had just occurred. Overclocking causes real-world damage to players. Eventually, this feature was banned by the developers. Feng had triggered it accidentally. Completely weakened, the monster wondered what price that player had to pay for such a sudden surge in power. He said the damage was transferred to his real body. If he died, he would die for real. But that no longer frightened him. He began to recall the last moments of his past life when he was expelled from Shadow. Despite all of his efforts, he was treated like trash, something that left him completely devastated. Even so, he was confident he could start over. For that reason, the risk of death was a small price to pay for him. With a single blow, he finally claimed the creature's life. Once defeated, a massive treasure chest appeared in the dungeon. The portal opened. Outside, the other players now knew the dungeon had been cleared. They hadn't expected any team to complete that challenge so quickly. In fact, they thought Ouroboros might eventually accomplish it, but they didn't know who these zero-wing players were. Infuriated, the jerk demanded to know Shadow's current progress. They couldn't get past the first stage, and the main team died so many times that they almost dropped to level 0. This only made the young man even angrier about what was happening, because now he was certain he was surrounded by trash players. After everything they went through, he finally managed to reach level 7. The system is now congratulating him for completing the dungeon. In moments, he will be teleported outside. Faced with this completely unlikely outcome, those who helped him in the battle are still in disbelief, because for a long time during the conflict, victory seemed utterly impossible. It doesn't take long, however, for them to decide to celebrate this beautiful result. This is enough to etch their names into history. The wicked blonde excitedly approaches her leader, thrilled with what happened. After all, they were the first team to complete the Cemetery of the Dark Moon. All Gentle Snow can think about now is that Feng is truly a terrifying existence. Now all that's left is for them to open the chest. Feng wonders who will do it. Gentle Snow wastes no time in being clear. Since he was the one who defeated the boss, he should be the one to open the chest. After this mere formality, Feng decided not to waste any more time. Immediately, several rare and valuable items appeared. There wasn't a single item there that wasn't worth a fortune. Among them were a sword and a very powerful runic shield. Gentle Snow quickly realized that those with extra money would eventually get their hands on these items. One of the men remarked that the set was worth at least 80 silver coins. His companion suggested they should keep the items. Turning to Feng, he said that if there was anything he fancied, he should take it first. Looking at the items, he seemed a bit undecided about what to do. Immediately, she thought these items weren't to Feng's liking, but he made it clear that wasn't the case. The only thing he wanted from those items was the ash blade, which was currently broken. The wicked blonde wanted to know why he chose that item, a cursed trash piece no player would ever want. Sympathizing with him, Gentle Snow offered that he could also take the equipment blueprints if he wanted. Her true intention was to strengthen their relationship. Faced with this sudden generosity, Feng asked if there was a reason behind it. She didn't hesitate to tell the truth. Her true intention was for Feng to join her guild. Hearing the truth, he said he would accept her kind gesture. Gentle Snow was very pleased, as Ouroboros was now closer to becoming the most powerful guild. However, Feng stated that he would have to decline the offer. This immediately left the wicked blonde upset with his decision. Despite everything, he had a simple reason for rejecting the proposal. Feng already had his own companions and wasn't willing to abandon them under any circumstances. For Gentle Snow, this wasn't an issue, as all of them could join as well. Feng said that if that was the case, she should invite them directly. Blackie said he was flattered by the invitation, but his intention was to continue growing alongside his friend. In unison, they declared that one day Zero Wing would become a great guild, and they wanted to see that dream come true. Knowing she couldn't push further, she said she looked forward to the next opportunity to collaborate with them. Finally, the exit portal appeared inside the dungeon. With the items properly distributed, it was time to leave that place. For what they accomplished in the dungeon, each of them received 10 reputation points in White River City. This message was broadcast to all players. As they exited through the portal, a large crowd of players was waiting for them. The very smug clown approached in a threatening manner. Glaring at Feng, he said that they would meet again very soon. His guild, despite spending many resources, had been utterly incapable of overcoming that challenge. Gentle Snow remarked that their focus on battling players was misguided. They should start addressing their flaws if they wanted to succeed. And since she brought up this topic in the conversation, she must already be aware of how they typically obtain new equipment. Gentle Snow was aware this could be problematic, as they were very numerous. The jerk demanded that they hand over half of the dungeon loot to avoid an all-out conflict. One of his lackeys suggested attacking immediately, as they must be completely exhausted. But his focus was elsewhere. Equipment was a secondary priority today. Their true objective was Feng, because on this day their goal was to take all the items he possessed. Feng instructed Gentle Snow to lead the other players into the forest. That would prevent them from being surrounded. However, the jerk wasn't willing to make their escape easy. Surprisingly, Feng began calmly approaching him. He asked if the guy's real intention was to take his equipment. If that was indeed his intention, he could take them immediately if he was capable of such a feat. That only made them even angrier in his arrogant gesture. This time, they weren't in the city. There were no guards to save him now. The jerk coordinated his lackeys, telling them to prepare to attack him immediately. Blackie was excited by the violence approaching, eager to test the power of his new equipment. A bit further back, Evil Blonde wondered what was going through these guys' minds as they took such reckless actions. Gentle Snow stated that anyone who wanted to take advantage of her guild would have to pay a very high price. The jerk said the focus wasn't on them, but if they decided to help Feng, they would suffer alongside him. The horde of low-class, second-rate players charged forward as if they were the protagonists of the story. The first strike was made but failed to hit its target. Feng, on the other hand, succeeded completely with his counterattack. This made the jerk worry as he realized his opponent was much faster than he had anticipated. Feng told his team once again to head into the forest. Without questioning, Gentle Snow was among those leading the movement. Meanwhile, a player had conjured a fireball to attack, but the shield warrior, equipped with his new gear, was ready to defend his friends. The runic shield was strong enough to block the attack without issue. Even so, he took some damage and wished Kola were there with them too. The attacking mage was impressed by the warrior's magical defense. It was frighteningly high. Losing her patience, Evil Blonde decided she would turn those players to ashes. A much larger fireball headed toward the jerks. The subsequent explosion was devastating, something the jerk leader hadn't expected to happen so quickly. He tried to rally his subordinates, reminding them of their numerical advantage and ordering them to target the healers first. Evil Blonde declared they were all reckless and would now pay for their poor life choices. She launched another fire attack at them. Those caught in the attack couldn't do anything to defend themselves. This began to seriously worry the jerk leader. Even her best tank had been taken out. Evil Blonde called them rats who didn't know their place, while the jerk leader was horrified by the power she wielded. He ordered the assassins in his group to target the fire mage immediately. At the same time, he furiously demanded Feng's head. Scanning the battlefield, they couldn't find their nemesis anywhere. His subordinates reported that Feng had vanished the moment the fight began. He ordered them to find him since he was the reason for the entire conflict. Meanwhile, Evil Blonde continued taking out the weaker players. She only regretted that there were so many of these cockroaches, unaware that some were sneaking up on her from behind. The cunning assassins were eager to take her down. Realizing she was being ambushed, she became angrier than usual. This time, they would die for real. Unfortunately for her, her attacks were still on cooldown, leaving her completely defenseless. As they were about to strike, a swift slash was made. Both players realized their health had almost entirely drained. They died without even knowing they had been attacked by Feng. Evil Blonde was delighted to realize what had happened and was preparing to thank him. But Feng quickly left the area as the battle was still ongoing. The farther he moved, the more she thought he was even stronger than she had imagined. The enemy healers were working hard to revive their allies. One of them had his throat slit without realizing it. Feng had approached them stealthily. It took a moment before another healer noticed what was happening, only to be immediately cut down by Feng's blade. The jerk leader, looking back, saw what had just occurred. Realizing he no longer had any healers, his rage grew uncontrollably. He charged at Feng, activating one of his attack skills, the Rampaging Bull. Now he was too close, ready to unleash his most powerful strike. Feng appeared to have been caught off guard by the sudden approach. However, what the jerk had actually slashed was merely an image. The real Feng was safely positioned behind him. Even angrier, he declared that all Feng knew in battle were cheap tricks. Taunting him, he said Feng wasn't man enough to take one of his attacks head-on. This time his blade was properly stopped. It took him a moment to realize he posed no real threat. Feng said that the jerk's attack still needed to grow a lot stronger to even be weak. After that, he pushed him back with a light kick to the abdomen. While the jerk struggled to catch his breath, Feng was already behind him. This time, he delivered numerous slashing strikes. The jerk was overwhelmingly defeated. His lifeless body fell to the ground as Feng stood victorious. Even weakened, he tried to mumble a few words. He wouldn't let such humiliation pass unnoticed. The conflicts seemed to be over. With the leader defeated, his subordinates were disoriented. They no longer knew whether to continue fighting. The most sensible of the jerks said the boss had been defeated, and if they persisted, they would be defeated too. As they fled, they vowed things wouldn't end like this. From the top of a cliff, another player remarked that they didn't need any help. It seemed the downfall of martial union began when they decided to provoke Feng. Feng started to say his goodbyes, stating he was about to leave. The wicked blonde acknowledged how useful it would be for the guild to have someone like him. Indeed, he was an exceptional player and would eventually become their opponent. She sincerely hoped that day would take a long time to arrive. News of Martial Union's defeat began to spread across the server. Some videos were uploaded by players and quickly became the most talked about and viewed content. Gemble Snow's fame grew even more because of what she had accomplished. With her guild's rising influence, many players started enlisting. Additionally, other influential players on the server began noticing Feng's existence. But his popularity grew uncontrollably. Some admired him, others were terrified of him. And then there were those who had fallen desperately in love with him. One player remarked to the warrior that it must be great to fight alongside Feng. He agreed with the statement, but said it was also very dangerous. The tank said he had learned new skills, so the warrior wouldn't need to take on the tank's role anymore. Approaching Kola and Sloth, Feng said he would get new items for them too. He advised them to buy equipment and repair their gear. He would be leaving to take care of some matters now. They bid farewell cheerfully. Following his advice, they immediately went to the forge. Inside, the blacksmith began estimating the cost of repairing all their gear. The amount worried them since they would have to pay several silver coins. He explained that repairing expensive and heavily worn gear wasn't an easy task. Even so, they paid for the service, which cost them almost their entire dungeon reward. Blackie reminded them that their reputation had increased in that village. Perhaps they could get a discount because of it. The blacksmith stated that he had already given them the discounted price and that they should be a little more grateful. Unfortunately, it was still very expensive, but there was nothing they could do about it. Meanwhile, Feng was busy checking the items in his inventory. After everything he had done, he had nearly 80 gold coins saved. In his past life, he had never seen the Ash Blade in person. It was said that his wielder was a god slayer. More could only be learned about the item upon reaching the Lunar Star level. Until then, he would keep it in his inventory. Among the items, there was something the Furious Lion had dropped. Unsure what it was at first, he appraised it. It turned out to be a teleportation item that could take him to the city of Black Wing, with 4 uses remaining. Feng imagined that this was the secret behind Martial Union's progress in his past life. Black Wing was a legendary city. With that item in his possession, Furious Lion and his team would no longer advance as easily. Knowing it was Friday, he decided to head to Black Wing City because something was happening there. He instructed Blackie and the others to go to a level 8 area to grind while he handled matters elsewhere. In the slums of Leaf Village, there was an apparently abandoned bar. It served as a meeting point for rogue players. Furious went there to hire an assassin. He said the assassin could name his own price. The assassin listened to the proposal patiently. This infuriated the subordinate as nothing had been said yet. Without him noticing, his throat was slit. He vanished immediately, to the leader's shock. The assassin stated that his price would be 10 gold coins. Furious Lion pointed out that this target was very strong and would surely pique the assassin's interest. Very excited, he wanted to know who this player was. Feng had gone directly to Blackwing City. The item had teleported him to one of the city's alleys. Inside that city was one of the most famous auction houses in the entire game. Since he arrived early, he still had time to browse before the auction began. From his inventory, he pulled out the mysterious mask. He immediately put it on his face to walk around in disguise. Under the pseudonym of his alias, he decided to visit the engineering shop first. It took him 10 minutes to find the first workshop, and it didn't even take 2 minutes before he left it. For now, the items that were still too expensive and those rocket boots were perfect for making quick escapes. Even so, he managed to buy an ice grenade, which would be very useful if Martial Union decided to chase him. While walking, he accidentally bumped into a player. The player, thinking it was an NPC, angrily told him to watch where he was going. Only then did he notice that this person was a player and already at level 7. Not only that, but from the information, he saw that Feng wasn't part of any guild. It seemed likely that he was a player from another country. Blackwing City was a neutral city-state, so it was normal to see players from other jurisdictions. The player said this rookie must be very lucky to have ended up in this city by accident. Feng simply turned his back and kept walking, leaving the player annoyed at being ignored. The player threatened, saying things wouldn't stay this way after being ignored. Feng wanted to know what he planned to do about it. Another player stepped in to defuse the situation, saying there was no benefit in them fighting. The angry player said he would refrain from fighting only because Lone Swan was there. Introducing himself, he said he belonged to the Moon Temple. This was a very large guild headquartered in the Tulip Empire. Rumors said the competition for power there was intense. Feng introduced himself under his alias Black Flame from the Star Moon Kingdom. Knowing he came from a distant place, they assumed he was there for the auction house. To enter the place, one needed to buy the Blackwing emblem, which cost 2 gold coins. Feng said he wasn't aware of that, but thought to himself that he played dumb to avoid drawing attention. The other player invited him to join them, saying they had a spare emblem and could take him to the auction house. Faced with this kindness, the impatient player became even more irritated. He told his friend not to complain later if he decided to abandon the group. The other players said that if this stranger had made it to the city, he must be capable, and they'd surely cross paths with him again in the future. Still furious, the impatient player refused to acknowledge any merit in Black Flame. As the discussion continued, Feng began to walk away, saying he wouldn't trouble them further. They were surprised by this attitude, guessing he must be very wealthy, as not even 3 gold coins would get him an emblem. As he walked away, the irritable player continued to pester him. Feng went directly to the auction house. The gates had opened and players began rushing inside. A guard stopped their advance, stating they couldn't enter yet. They showed their emblems, but the guard said commoners must wait for the more important individuals to enter first. He pointed to the demon hunter lord, someone who could enter even without an emblem. Looking at this player, they immediately recognized him. It was Black Flame. As he passed, he was greeted with great respect by the guard. The 2 players hadn't imagined he was a demon hunter. Inside the hall, players began to organize themselves. The auctioneer struck his hammer, signaling the start of the auction. The first item was a level 20 armor priced at 2 gold coins. Feng used his analysis ability to examine the attributes of the equipment. With it, he aimed to identify treasures at the auction. One player noted the item hadn't been appraised. Buying it meant taking a risk. Feng already knew the item's true value and decided to play the game by placing a bid on it. Knowing he was the demon hunter, it was likely the item was indeed valuable. The disrespectful player from earlier was surprised by Feng's generosity. He immediately raised the bid to 5 gold coins. Other players commented that he must be very wealthy to make such a bid. It didn't take long for Black Flame to raise his bid to 10 gold coins. Among the other players, this sparked a discussion. The item was certainly going to be hotly contested. Much more competitive, the young man raised his bid as well, determined not to let his rival purchase what he wanted. Black Flame increased the bid, raising it to 20 gold coins. This only made the other young man even more furious at being outdone. His friend warned him that the price was already exorbitantly high and the item wasn't worth that much. But he was determined to be stubborn and wouldn't stop, as he wanted to regain the respect he had lost. He placed a bid of 30 gold coins, willing to use his guild's funds to secure the item. That amount already exceeded the budget of many players, showing his strong determination. He began boasting, saying he belonged to a major guild and money was no issue for them. Without showing any emotion, Black Flame raised the bid to 35 gold coins. The other players started to panic. How could an independent player have that many coins? Turning to the auctioneer, he demanded that Black Flame's account be immediately verified. However, the auctioneer confirmed that the bid was entirely valid. Since his credibility was being questioned, Black Flame asked where the power of the young man's guild was. That remark pushed him to the brink of his fury. He placed a bid of 36 gold coins, which he'd have to pay using an advance on funds he hadn't yet received. Now it was Black Flame's turn to provoke him, remarking that such a meager increase of 1 coin was ridiculous. He raised the bid once more, bringing it to a total of 40 gold coins. This amount was equivalent to several years of the young man's salary. It seemed impossible for him to be so invested in buying this item. This could only mean that the armor must be more valuable than he had imagined. Completely immersed in the illusion, he increased his bid to a total of 50 gold coins. He must have lost his mind. This was his guild's entire budget. Black Flame clapped and announced that he had been defeated. The other player wanted to know if Black Flame wouldn't increase his bid any further. Since he was supposedly so wealthy, he should continue bidding, given his willingness to spend money. With no further bids, the auctioneer declared the item sold. The young man celebrated, overjoyed to have acquired the breastplate. Only then did he discover it was a Western wind plate breastplate, worth a total of 1 silver coin. This particular model was incredibly rare. While its stats were identical to other versions, it had a stylish appearance. He had no idea how he would explain such a foolish act. Assuming his guild would be contacted and refusal to pay would result in severe system penalties. Black Flame was further admired by other players for outsmarting a competitor at the auction. Knowing he now lacked resources for further bidding left the young man utterly devastated. Another player remarked that the demon hunter was cunning and warned others to be careful not to be deceived as well. For several minutes he refrained from bidding until the next item category appeared. The next item was a weapon forging blueprint, starting at 1 silver coin. Analyzing the item, Black Flame realized luck was on his side. This was a level 10 Silver Dawn blueprint. These items were crucial in his past life for level 10 players, and he also needed 10 secret silver weapons to evolve his abyssal blade. He placed a bid of 1 silver coin, causing other players to suspect it was a trap. Immediately, they grew cautious and were hesitant to bid on the blueprint. After his bid, no other players placed a bid either. With no competitors in sight, this was his chance to secure something valuable for a bargain. The auctioneer continued the countdown. The other players refused to be tricked this time. With no other bids, the item was sold for 1 silver coin. Only then did the auctioneer announce that it was a blueprint for a secret silver one-handed sword. This revelation left the players in despair, as the average value of such an item was 20 gold coins. This time, Black Flame achieved a crushing victory. The final item up for auction was a rare melee combat skill, Thunder Flame Explosion, starting at 5 gold coins. In his past life, he had never seen this book in the marketplace. Its value couldn't simply be measured in coins. It didn't take long for the bidding to reach 42 gold coins. Since everyone knew its value, he just needed to wait for the right moment to place his bid. At this point, the item was being sold for 50 gold coins. Unluckily, that bid was made by an NPC, and with his analysis ability, Feng discovered that it was very wealthy. There was no fooling these characters. He had to offer them market value. With his coins running low, he hoped 60 gold coins would be a fair price. Unfortunately, the mage raised the bid to 70 gold coins. Knowing he hadn't prepared enough funds, he began to consider his options in this situation. He realized one of his items had been sold, giving him a total of 113 gold coins. He placed a bid of 100 gold coins, hoping it would be enough to secure the item. Even the other players couldn't believe how serious that bid was. The auctioneer asked if anyone else wished to make a higher offer. The players were still furious about the demon hunter's presence, which had disrupted the auction for everyone. Finally, the auctioneer announced the item had been sold for 100 gold coins. Receiving the book, Feng recognized it as an excellent skill for dealing with other players in the early stages of the game. In addition to base damage, the skill stunned enemies for 4 seconds and dealt fire and lightning damage. As the auction ended, the players began leaving the hall. While exiting, someone called out to him. It was a woman named Aqua Rose. She was one of the top 10 conjurers in the game, someone of immense fame in his past life. He hadn't expected to meet her there. She mentioned that he hadn't seen her at the auction. She said it was understandable since he had been in a section reserved for important individuals. As a representative of Twilight Echo, she wanted to know if he was interested in discussing a potential partnership. For him, this was advantageous knowing that they were involved in the virtual gaming industry. He decided to listen to her proposal. She asked him to go somewhere else where they could talk more comfortably. Meanwhile, the impatient player was still fuming over what had happened at the auction. Aqua Rose took Feng to a restaurant in the city. Using her perception abilities, she noted that Feng was surprisingly handsome for someone so renowned as a blacksmith in the human kingdom. She had imagined he would be an eccentric old man. Cutting through the small talk, Feng asked her to get to the point, saying he was always happy to expand his network. Twilight Echo needed a large supply of radiant breastplates but could only pay with credits at the moment. Selling wasn't an issue for him, but he wanted to know why the payment would be in credits as they couldn't be directly exchanged for gold. Due to the scarcity of gold, they could only pay in installments. In truth, payment in credits was advantageous to him at this time. He warned, however, that his prices were high. She mentioned they needed 500 sets of armor and would order more equipment later, with the condition that he wouldn't sell these items to other players. Feng quickly realized that her intention was to resell the items as her network was much larger than his. He demanded gold coins upfront and the rest in credits, but he had one condition of his own. Knowing she came from a mineral-rich region, he wanted to buy minerals from her at a lower price to continue producing equipment, as ore was much more valuable to him. He also requested a pass to Blackwing City so they could continue trading. She agreed to sell the minerals at a discount and mentioned that the pass had already been prepared. With that settled, he acknowledged it had been a pleasure doing business with her. They sealed the deal with a toast. In a rented house, Feng prepared to work on the designs. He mentioned it would take 2 hours, and she agreed to wait. It was a very lucrative deal since his profit was guaranteed, regardless of whether she successfully resold the items. As time passed, he finally opened the door. Apologizing for keeping her waiting longer than expected, he thought to himself how exhausting it was to design all those blueprints at once. Opening the system, they began the exchange. As a result, he received nearly 18 million credits. Everything happened so quickly that before he knew it, he had become a multimillionaire. Very soon, he would have even more money and could set up his own workshop to compete with Shadow at the social gathering. Aqua Rose requested 3 days to gather the minerals he needed, reminding him to bring more equipment and weapons when they met again. Shaking hands, Feng assured her she wouldn't regret the deal. This time, Feng appeared in Red Leaf Village. A notice circulated throughout the city, informing players that the game would soon undergo an update lasting 2 hours. Players were advised to log out within the next 10 minutes. He found it strange how quickly this update was completed, as it should have taken at least a month to finish. After this update, material prices will skyrocket, making it an excellent opportunity to earn money. He decided to head to the auction house to make some trades. Immediately, he began organizing his inventory. At the moment, he is buying everything he can, preparing for the price surge that is about to come. He managed to do all of this before time ran out, completely filling his inventory. This way, he could log out of the game with peace of mind. In the real world, it's still morning. Feng removed the helmet from his head, feeling very relieved. On the news, he learned that major business conglomerates were joining the game God's domain. Within hours, stores selling virtual helmets were packed. The game set a record of 18 billion simultaneous players. Feng now has a clearer understanding of what the game is achieving. With the new wave of players, major guilds are preparing to sell equipment to these newcomers. This game is becoming humanity's second world. Apparently, the grand evolution of God's domain arrived just in time. It is the first virtual game capable of evolving itself. Unlike traditional games that rely on external intervention, this game evolves through player participation. It all comes down to the survival of the fittest. The game never stops collecting this data. The more the game is explored, the greater the difficulty increases. This is what they call the grand evolution. Feng is definitely responsible for a significant portion of this update due to his great achievements. For this reason, he is dedicating himself more and more to physical activities. The major conglomerates are relentlessly recruiting new players, many of whom are renowned athletes. With a large support team working behind the scenes, this has made competition with ordinary players even tougher. Feng drank a high-grade nutritional fluid to recover. He had already consumed several of these potions. Stepping outside, he realized it was time to catch up on the real world. Everywhere he went, there were advertisements about the game. On the streets, people were excited about getting equipment to start playing. Some already had friends in the game, which would make their initial progress easier. The large corporations weren't holding back in their efforts to recruit new players. Some were being offered million-dollar contracts. Gentle Snow, for instance, was a sensation in real life as well, earning millions for simple advertisements. Feng went to the commercial district to buy a new phone. His intention was to get a better and more updated device. Seeing this, the saleswoman assumed he might not have much money. She mentioned they were currently selling neural wristwatches which were enhanced for connecting to God's domain. She added that they were a bit expensive. Feng made it clear that price wasn't an issue. After purchasing the watch, he left the store as the saleswoman thanked him. She thought that despite being discreet, he must be a very wealthy man. On his way back, the watch buzzed, notifying him of an incoming call. It was the class president, reminding him about the social gathering on Friday and asking him to arrive on time. Confirming that he would, she said she had another announcement to make. Everyone was required to pay a fee of 5,000 credits. Knowing he was a scholarship student, she offered to help request a waiver for him. Feng replied that it wasn't necessary as he had already paid the fee. The girl was curious to know how he managed to get so much money. He said he earned it from the game, knowing it was better to hide that he had become a major magnate. She was very impressed. Now it made sense that he owned such an advanced neural watch. He asked if she wanted to play as well, but she explained that her parents forbade it, and with so much going on in her life, she didn't have time. However, she was very happy that he was making money from the game. She just asked him not to be late for the event. After that, she ended the call. Feng thought she had hung up a bit too quickly. As he walked, he received another notification from his watch. The game had already been updated, and now he could return to playing without issues. Feng logged back into the game as soon as possible. He felt more familiar with the interface, and 2 new physical attributes have been introduced. Running and teleporting now consume stamina instead of mana. If a player became fatigued, recovery would only happen after a long rest period. In this new update, the base value for stamina was set at 100 points. However, for veteran players, stamina was calculated based on agility points. That's why investing in agility early on proved so advantageous. It allows him to take more actions before reaching fatigue. There's also concentration now, which is consumed when using magic. If it gets too low, magic becomes ineffective. This was designed to prevent players from casting spells endlessly. Since he hadn't invested in intelligence, his concentration pool wasn't very large. He then noticed a message attached to the system. It came from the one who removed his curse, making him suspect it might be a trap. His intuition told him to get rid of that envelope as soon as possible. However, he recognized that ignoring it could lead to even worse consequences. When opened, the envelope emitted an intense glow. It revealed the emblem of the Holy Cross, an item that weakens undead creatures and purifies evil auras. He knew this was a very rare divine item. It seemed Krika might not be as bad a person as he had thought. As he made his way forward, someone asked him to stop for a moment. A player wanted to know if he was interested in taking on a well-paying job. Feng said he was willing to listen. This guy often paid other players to help him level up more easily. Seeing Feng's high-quality gear, he thought he'd make the offer. The first thing Feng wanted to know was how much he'd be paid for the service. The player said he paid 200 credits for every level he gained, believing it to be a very enticing offer. Feng simply turned his back and said he wasn't interested in such a small amount. The rejection made the player furious, assuming Feng was just another poor person in real life who ate instant noodles and lived in a rental. Throwing a rock at him, the player shouted that others would beg on their knees for such an opportunity. After being hit, the system notified Feng that an assassination attempt had been detected. Feng's expression completely changed. The player became worried as the shift in Feng's aura was noticeable. Other players remarked that the guy must be incredibly ignorant for attacking an aristocrat. It didn't take long for the city guards to arrive. Detecting a commoner attacking a noble, they initiated the process of eliminating the vermin. The player tried to explain that it wasn't his intention to do so, but his excuses were of no use. Feng left the area, thanking the guards for their service. With this new update, it was time for him to pursue the blue ice devil flame. In his past life, it appeared in the forest of 100 phantoms. This item increased success rates in forging. Finally, he approached the forest, leaving the safe zone. To move faster, he started using the benefits of the gravity ring. Now that it consumed stamina, he could use the ring consecutively. Looking down, he saw the level 5 area for beginners was already drenched in blood. There was a clear indication that the game had become much harder. While still in the air, he received a stamina warning, as his bar was nearly depleted. Feng was very satisfied with the distance he had covered using just that amount of stamina. He was soon surprised by 2 players running from something. They were delighted to find him, thinking he might make a better distraction. As they continued running, they hoped the wolves would shift their focus to him. Feng noticed the pack quickly closing in on his position. The 2 players were convinced he wouldn't stand a chance against the creatures. Cautiously, Feng took the ice grenade from his inventory. Throwing it at the creatures, he wiped them all out. The newcomers had imagined this outcome. Meanwhile, Feng realized his stamina was almost fully recovered. He suddenly disappeared before their eyes. On the ground, they stared in disbelief as the strangers soared away. They were amazed that he could fly, even considering deleting their accounts to start anew as swordsmen. Feng began taking his first steps into the forest. It was a cursed place untouched by sunlight. There was no life there, only accursed spirits. The narrow path he followed led to the heart of the forest, where he would find the blue ice devil Flame. In his past life, Glorious Light had coveted this item. They sent 1,000 members into the forest and 200 of them perished. Altogether, the losses were even greater. -700 players died in the forest, a high price for obtaining the item. Physical attacks were completely ineffective against the cursed spirits. However, that didn't mean there weren't ways to attack them effectively. With the artifact he had received as a gift, navigating the forest became much easier than he had expected. From behind him, someone attempts a sneak attack. Sensing the murderous intent approaching, he summons defensive blades to shield himself. The protective barrier around him prevents something worse from happening. Now with his sword in hand, he tries to counter his attacker. Unfortunately, he finds nothing. The dark environment is perfect for assassins to operate safely. He was lucky to react in time. If he had been stunned, he would have faced serious trouble. The assassin approaches again, this time announcing that he is there for the player's life. He moves swiftly, determined to complete his mission. Feng faces him head-on, prepared to defend against the attack. He launches his swords at him, piercing the target completely, only to realize he has been fooled by a clone. The real assassin is already behind him. He lands a precise strike on Feng's neck. Introducing himself as Absolute Heaven, he declares that he wants his victim to know who ended his life. But the assassin is surprised to discover that his target is also capable of using clones. Feng knows that now, with the assassin's true body revealed, the situation has shifted in his favor, since assassins are even more fragile than curse casters. The assassin attempts another attack, but he's quickly immobilized by Feng's chains. He is astonished that his target was able to identify him so quickly. With his observational skills, identifying a clone wasn't a difficult task for Feng. He adds that the technique the assassin used is far from being as refined as his own. This only excites the assassin further, as he enjoys fighting opponents who surpass him. He warns that he should never be underestimated. With that, he manages to break free from the chains holding him. This is the first time Feng has encountered a player with such extensive skills. His attacker exudes confidence, believing nothing will stop him from completing his mission. Feng finds his intent to engage in a direct fight foolish. He blocks the first strike using his swords, but this is far from normal. The assassin is managing to trade blows with him face to face, which, while unexpected, is not entirely bad. It's Feng's first encounter with such a satisfying battle. Using his wind blades, he pushes the attacker back. The assassin is impressed by the speed of his victim's attacks. Moreover, that strike was effective in repelling him. It was more than enough to throw him far away. Feng gains altitude using the gravity control ring's ability. The assassin, unsure of what it is intrigued, thinking Feng might be able to fly. Feng prepares to unleash Thunder Flame Explosion, a skill he acquired at the auction house. He directs a powerful attack at his assailant. The assassin uses the Shadow Cloak, which reduces all elemental damage by 95%. The impact occurs, sending debris flying into the air. Despite the destructive force of the attack, the assassin remains alive. Although the damage was significantly reduced, his health has been affected. Even with his most powerful defensive skill, the assassin suffers considerable damage. Feng is clearly too strong to be confronted in a direct fight. Feng notices that this assassin truly knows how to use his abilities in combat. In front of him, the assassin begins preparing to flee. Realizing the assassin is about to conceal his presence, Feng charges at him once more. But the assassin remains confident, claiming he has a hidden card to play. Feng activates Overclock again. The assassin is sure his victim won't reach him in time. However, several swords are rapidly closing in on him. They strike the ground, destroying everything in their path. The swords are embedded in the soil, and there is no sign of the assassin. But one sword seems to have found its mark. The assassin is gravely injured and has almost no health left. He tries to say something, but Feng is about to finish him off. Grabbing him by the face, Feng slams the attacker into the ground. Despite the heated battle, Feng feels very satisfied with the outcome. Feng tells him it's important to preserve his level and offers to spare him if he reveals who hired him. The assassin replies that he cannot say, but is very pleased with the fight they had. While many hold grudges against Feng, this assassin simply seeks battles against skilled players. He asks if Feng would like them to die together. It is then that Feng notices the explosive artifact in the assassin's hand. This was definitely not something he was expecting. A massive explosion erupts in the middle of the forest. In overclock mode, the player also dies in real life. This is the risk Feng accepted. And yet, despite the powerful explosion, he remains alive. He begins to breathe a sigh of relief, realizing he survived by a very narrow margin. Unfortunately, the emblem of the Holy Cross he carried ended up being destroyed. This item, when used in a malevolent spirit environment, preserves its user from a lethal attack with just 1 point of health. After that, the item is destroyed. Feng began to wonder if the cleric had foreseen such a scenario. Knowing her, He assumed it was just a big coincidence. In his past life, he was never targeted by this assassin. It seemed he was drawing too much attention now, and now he had other problems to deal with. Those monsters were no less dangerous than the assassin. He needed to leave immediately. To do so, he used gravitational release. Feng escaped the forest through the sky. It didn't take long for him to find the village of 100 phantoms. Upon entering the village, he encountered various hostile creatures. The ghouls began to glare at him menacingly. Each of those monsters was 8 levels above him, giving them a natural combat advantage. A dozen of those creatures were more than enough to wipe out a level 15 team completely. Once again, he prepared to throw an ice grenade. He hurled it confidently at the creatures. The grenade proved to be a truly useful item. The creatures were completely frozen and their health greatly reduced. One grenade, however, wasn't enough to eliminate them. Freed from their icy prisons, they resumed their attack. But now weakened, they were no match for Feng. He earned a significant amount of experience for dealing with those monsters. This made him realize he could lure some creatures and level up in that area. Ideally, he could eliminate them using just the grenade, avoiding direct combat. After thinking briefly, he came up with a brilliant plan. By equipping the title of Demon Hunter, his damage increased by 10% while reducing dark creatures' attributes by the same amount. Throwing the grenade at them, he expected it to be more effective now. The creatures were immediately frozen. Feng also noticed that the applied damage was slightly higher this time. Feeling much more excited, he was determined to seize the opportunity to gain more levels. Within half an hour, he had already reached level 9. The level of his skills had also increased, motivating him even further. However, he noticed that the creatures were now starting to flee. He had no idea why this was happening. An hidden achievement had been unlocked. He had become the nightmare of ghouls. Now he scared off any of those creatures within a 20-meter radius of his presence. But that didn't discourage him, as his goal was to obtain the blue flame. He went to the fountain in the square and found the item he had been searching for. As he approached the bluish fire, he decided to collect it and leave immediately. As he moved closer, the ground began to shake. Looking back, he saw a massive creature approaching. It was the Ghost King, a level 15 boss. The time had finally come for the boss to appear in combat. In his past life, the presence of this boss had been extremely problematic for players. A single blow from it was completely fatal and destroyed armor. Even the best tanks couldn't survive more than 2 hits, but it was possible to face it, provided there was enough agility to avoid being struck. As he strategized for the battle, a chill ran down his spine. Looking behind him, he was met with a pair of glowing blue eyes. Another equally hostile creature had revealed itself. It was the Knight of Wrath, another boss-level creature. Equally problematic in his past life, it was responsible for eliminating hundreds of elite players. Feng found himself at a completely deadly crossroads. The system had generated 2 bosses simultaneously. He didn't know if it was coincidence or if he was being targeted by the game. Regardless of the answer, this was definitely becoming interesting for him. Feng prepared himself to fight both creatures at the same time. The Knight of Wrath began charging its energy. It declared itself an enemy of all living beings and vowed to bury Feng in the forest, driving its sword into the ground as it spoke. Immediately, undead began to rise. Feng watched as the corpses passively multiplied. He decided to use speed scrolls to gain an initiative advantage in the fight. These creatures were resistant to ice but weak against physical damage, so he decided to defeat them with his sword. A barrage of slashes destroyed the creatures instantly. This cleared the path for him to approach the Knight of Wrath. Before he could strike the boss, he noticed something approaching. It was an attack, and he had to dodge to avoid being hit. His evasion proved effective. Had he been struck, he would have lost a significant amount of health. The other creature is also focused on defeating him. Feng once again needs to keep dodging. This time, he used his defensive blades to parry the attack. The creature pulls back its cleaver as the player is flung away. He is already apprehensive as he has narrowly avoided a dangerous hit for the second time. And there is no moment to rest in this fight, as he immediately has to defend against the knight's sword. Feng does his best to parry the creature's blade. It's proving to be truly challenging. The longer it goes on, the more force the creature applies to its strike. Feng feels he won't be able to hold out much longer. There's a crushing effect to the strike, and his sword won't last much longer. He used the gravity release ability to get out of the blade's range. Finally, he's far enough away to avoid having his items destroyed. Attempting to block the creature's attacks may preserve his health, but will inevitably ruin his equipment. Knowing the knight is a melee combat creature, he decides it's better to keep his distance. The creature has an indestructibility trait and high physical resistance. His chance lies in using elemental damage against it. He launches Thunder Flame Explosion at the knight. Before it could hit, the other boss steps in to protect it. This creature is entirely immune to fire and lightning attributes. The damage will be multiplied and ricocheted. As expected, the attack did nothing to it. The fireball was redirected back at Feng. Manipulating gravity, he managed to avoid being hit by his own fireball. The Phantom King has an exceptionally high elemental resistance. However, its physical defense is weak, and there's an opportunity to strike when it cannot move. This happens when it uses its defense. The window Feng was waiting for has just opened. He throws one of his attack blades at the creature. As expected, the knight blocks the attack. Its defense is strong enough to completely destroy one of Feng's swords. He retreats, contemplating his next move to defeat both creatures. Feng abandons the blade that had just broken. He immediately activates high-performance mode. Power begins coursing through his entire body. As he prepares to act, the Wrath Knight quickly approaches. As it gets close enough, Feng pins it to the ground using the Abyssal Bind. He throws an ice grenade at the creature. As it explodes, he notices the other boss has activated its immunity again. This time, it selected immunity to the ice attribute. The creature delivers a massive, powerful slash toward the player, who narrowly evades it. From above, Feng launches Thunder Flame Explosion at it. Once again, the creature changes its elemental immunity, prepared to avoid the damage. Unexpectedly, the attack ricochets toward the Wrath Knight. The knight finds itself completely unable to dodge the massive fireball. The creature raises one arm to shield its face from the strike. As the flames dissipate, Feng's silhouette emerges. He lands Thunderous Flash against it, but none of his attacks deal enough damage. Thanks to the knight's indestructibility, all physical damage taken is reduced by 95%. Feng is entirely focused, aware that both creatures are ready to attack. The opportunity he was waiting for has finally arrived. He uses the gravity release ability to protect himself. The creature's cleaver is about to strike the knight. Because of its effect, all the knight's physical defense is lost. Now Feng can attack it without any hesitation. Using Nine Dragon's Slash, he delivers extraordinary damage. Now he only has one remaining creature to deal with. He throws another ice grenade at it. The boss activates its elemental immunity. Meanwhile, the knight, despite being low on health, continues relentlessly attacking the player. Thanks to the gravity control, Feng manages to avoid being hit. Meanwhile, the creature struggles with the ice grenade that just exploded in its path. The ice begins to engulf the knight completely. Thanks to this distraction, the knight's attack brutally strikes the other creature, dealing a fatal blow. Now Feng is left with just one weakened creature to handle. As long as he uses the game mechanics to his advantage, Feng can exploit them effectively. He hurls the cleaver of the recently defeated creature at it. The strike isn't fatal, but is enough to cut off one of the horns on its armor. From above, Feng descends toward it, ready to deliver a kick. He manages to get close without any risk. Executing his attack, he secures victory after an intense battle. The system congratulated him on his victory and rewarding the player with a massive amount of experience. As a reward, he received 2 magical scrolls, one of pummeling and another of brutality. He figured this was because he used the creature's abilities to defeat them, which was why he didn't receive any items. Now he truly had a clear path to collect the blue flame. Placing his hands on the flame, he acquired it. Outside, news spread that Martial Union was offering 10,000 credits for each time someone killed Feng. Some were hesitant. Even for 100,000 credits, this wasn't a task anyone would accept. After all, he was the demon hunter. As soon as he arrived in the city, players stopped talking about the subject. Feng noticed that the atmosphere in the place seemed a bit different. So the video ends here. If you don't want to miss the next part, activate the notification bell, and see you next time on Juicy Channel.